Last that night, I slept with towels on. Spiders scare me to death. Big spiders. I'm sure. Oh, she scared me.
Did I get your attention? Yay.
Got mine.
Excellent. I'll call to order the City of Keystone Heights. This is a public hearing. Monday, June 20th at 6:28. Ms. Wachowski, would you like to call roll, please?
Mayor Karen Lake,
Yeah, here, yes.
Vice Mayor Hart,
Here.
Councilman Bobby Brown,
Here.
Councilman Tony Brown,
Here.
Councilwoman Thompson.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I'd like to reiterate and ask the question of council people on the dais. Has there been any conversation outside the first hearing which would have compromised your position or your integrity in making a decision on the matter before us?
I have had no contact with any party.
Ms.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Brown?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Brown, okay. Public comments. Ms. Wachowski?
I have public comment, and I also have some that are reserved for public hearing. But two for public comment. First is Ms. Sue Plaster.
Okay, Ms. Plaster, would you like to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record? And also for the record, the attorney for the applicant would like you to hold up your right hand and swear you'll tell the whole truth.
And if I can have you please push the gray button on the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
So if you would just raise your right hand, Ms. Sue, and say you swear that you'll tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, please.
I do swear to tell the truth and the whole truth.
Thank you. Go ahead and share with us your comments.
I was just wanting to comment on the Country Meadows development. I've just been listening to both sides and things as I go, and the one thing I'm most complimented on is the fact that I listen and I hear both sides, but I think the biggest problem word in this whole thing is affordable housing. They're using it, and I think it's hurting them, because then you hear that, well, that's what they said about High Ridge. It was affordable housing. And so they tried to tell me it was the same people. I said, no, it's not. If it's the same people, they're either dead or as old as I am. I said, High Ridge has been there a long time. That's been a long time. These are not the same people that started. I said, well, that's what they said, that it was affordable housing. So I have to watch that word. So I asked, I said, well, how much are these houses? And they said, in the neighborhood of $250,000. I said, oh my gosh, I paid $12,000 my first affordable housing. Also, that was 1954, but it was still, it was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, starter house. And everybody was in it, but you know, through the years I've kept up with all of them, and all of us that started out in that housing, every one of us have gone on to nice big jobs and homes and, you know, a lot of growth. So it doesn't mean you just stay there anyway. But I don't see that the individual housing that they're putting in around that cost. And I've heard, well, it's going to be mobile homes. Well, it's not. It's homes that they're building. So I just think there's misinterpretation on that. And I'm a realtor with CB Isaac Realty, so I have a bias in this. We are short on inventory. We need houses to sell badly. And we're very short on that, so I would very much look forward to having 55 homes to show people. That would be great. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plaster. Ms. Wachowski?
Next, I have Mr. Keith Hatch.
Welcome, Mr. Hatch. If you would state for the record your name, address, and solemnly swear to tell the truth.
I am Mr. Hatch. I am a broker and co-owner of Hatch Realty Services at 350 South Lawrence. Have a secondary residence at 1 North Pole. So I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I'm not going to speak to the specific development. This council is sitting at a pivotal point for Keystone Heights. You're set to make a decision for the future. And what I'd like to come to the council with is to share some facts. I have to say, I've looked at social media. In social media, people don't want to lose a small town field. I don't want to lose a small town field. It's absolutely wonderful. We have our own parades, Christmas, 4th of July. We have sunrise service. We have things that other communities don't have because we are small. But I also love our children, and not my children, Keystone Heights children in the future. And as I look back over the past year, we were seeking a new elementary school. We were supposed to get some of those funds from the sales tax increase, but we were passed over. When you look at Mr. David Brodsky's letter to Ms. Allison Crable, one of the issues was growth. So I began to look at the facts for Keystone Heights and looked at over the past 10 years, since 2010 to 2021. Keystone's average yearly growth is 0.8%, less than 1%. While you look at Green Cove Springs, who received some of that money, 3%. Our median house sales price is $250,000. Our median age in the community is about 56 years old. And the value of the properties in which tax revenues are normally based on is only $199,000. If we're seeking new schools and new infrastructure for our city, we've got to have growth. I'm not saying uncontrollable growth. We've got to have sustainable, controlled growth. And whether it's this development you're speaking to tonight or some other one, you're going to be setting precedents for the future. I've heard the statement made that there are new homes or homes for sale in the area. Yes, there are. There are 50 listed right now. There are 50 homes listed. But selling existing homes does not increase growth. All it does is replace current population. Until you have new homes for sale, of which in the last year per the MLS were only 12 new homes. Now I know we've got builders in here that sell them themselves, but it's not that great of an increase over the 12 new homes that were sold last year. So I ask that the City Council really take into account, what do we want to do for the future? Do we want new schools for our kids? Do we want new infrastructure? Do we want revenues? Or do we want to continue down the same path we're going, put Band-Aids on the old, as we've done? I appreciate your time. I hope that you make the right decision for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch.
Madam Mayor, that's all the comment cards that I have for public comment.
Okay. Then let's go to item 2. And I'm going to open a public hearing, 19-08-23-022578-001-00. I open a public hearing. Do we have any public comment cards?
Well, we should probably have the applicant present the remainder of their application.
Okay. Are you prepared? Who's coming up for the applicant?
My name is Jed Ducrow. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. Everything I will say will be the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
First of all, Council, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here on the 20th. I know that you made special arrangements because of an operation that I'm about to have next week, and I truly appreciate your time in taking it out of this week to do it. Very quickly, I'm just here to introduce my team. We have a couple of new members that have joined since the last time we were here. But first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Mike Bell, who's sitting behind me. He is my engineer. He grew up here in Keystone, and he owns property here in Keystone. The second person is Misty Servia, She is sitting next to Mike. She is my planner, and she is with Planner On Call. She owns the company. Fourth, is Terrell Owen. I keep saying that to you. You're not playing football. I know you're not. Terrell Arline. He is of counsel with Anspacher Law, who is my law firm. Tim Moxley, the biggest guy in the room probably. He is the builder of record with Century Complete Homes. New members, Jeff Buchholz. He is the president of Buchholz Traffic, and he is sitting right here against the wall. And then John Ellis, who is president of Legacy Engineering, who did the geotech work. And John is sitting right back here in the plaid shirt. So we ask and thank you for your patience, ask for your continued patience as we present, and hopefully you'll come to a positive conclusion for our development. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tim Moxley. I'm with Century Complete Homes. I swear to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I wanted to take this opportunity. I really have very little skin in this game at this point in time, but I've been down this road and have some experience in this, and I wanted to make sure that I've listened to a lot of the residents of Keystone, and I've listened to their concerns, and I hear their concerns about the number of homes, what's going to be built, how it's going to be built. They've expressed concerns with the trees. They've expressed a number of concerns with the traffic. And I wanted to take this opportunity because as those presentations were made, I felt like we may need to do a better job of presenting what the potential alternatives may be. Mr. Ducrow is asking to build what is referred to as a PUD. Planned urban development. The benefits of a PUD, the homeowners association, much more controls, the internal common space. There's several design features that are associated with this potentially being a PUD. And with those design features, the current plan would have the potential to build 55 homes. If the subdivision, and I don't know that this has been laid out well in the past, and I want to make sure that it's really clear because, again, having gone down this road in the past, the alternative potential would be 52 homes if it was to follow straight zoning practices as it's laid out for the city of Keystone Heights. There's a delta of 3 homes there. And I don't know that that has been comparatively laid out that way. But if you go with straight zoning regulations in 53 homes, you lose, I think, in my opinion, as the builder, some of the benefits of the PUD, homeowner association control, which, by the way, council would have the opportunity for input with what those controls may be and how they would be handled. You lose a tremendous amount of the tree buffer opportunity that Mr. Ducrow and his planners have put into this that I think makes this a beautiful, potentially just a beautiful community. And I want to make sure that when everybody's considering this, you're not considering this as a zero-sum game. It's not 55 or nothing. It's 55 or 52. And is the delta of those 3 lots worth having those controls that the homeowners association would have over the process and how the property is managed, the opportunity for those folks in the community to have some control and have some self-control of their community and take pride in that community. And then one of the things that really concerns me is I've built in both PUDs and I've built in regular fee simple housing developments. What happens after the closing is much more difficult to control. Homeowners can do what they want, when they want. There aren't as many controls as far as how yards are maintained, landscapes maintained, all those type of things when you don't have the HOA that I see as huge benefits for the potential of the community that you automatically build into it and control and can make sure that things are maintained a certain way as a PUD. And so, yeah, there is a delta there of 3 potential more lots to build upon, but I think the potential benefits, in my opinion, outweigh that and how the subdivision progresses once the homes are built and once the residents are in the subdivision. So I wanted to take that opportunity and lay that out for you and say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Terrell Arline. I'm with Ansbacher Law, and I'm just going to introduce the team a little bit, tell you essentially what we're hoping to do tonight. This is a continuation of a quasi-judicial hearing that started on June the 6th, so it's just moving forward. Duke Road Development Group has brought their team here. And first off, just let me say that we met in Zoom with some of your staff, city manager and Chad, and I believe the Public Works Director, I'm sorry, was there. And we tried to hit all the high points, but we spent a lot of time talking about tree mitigation issue and the tree ordinance. And essentially where we came to, and I'm sure you probably realize this, is that we would withdraw the tree variance. We would actually put it in abeyance. It wouldn't go away. We just wouldn't put it on the agenda tonight. And allow Mr. Ducro, he's going to hire an arborist, a tree person, to go out there and do a site analysis, develop the data that Chad wants, and then apparently the tree ordinance is typically done here at the development phase when you go get a building permit or design something. And so what staff is agreed to do, and we've agreed to do, is just withdraw that whole variance request, hold it in abeyance, let the arborists do their job, meet with staff, and address the tree issue and mitigation at the staff level at the time they do their environmental permitting. That being said, we think that you can still hear the PUD, which is just the rezoning the property to planned unit development from residential. And the only modifications we have, which Mr. Bell is going to explain, are to lot dimension and lot width, the area of the lot, and that the issue of the tree compliance with the code will be dealt with administratively at the permitting phase. And hopefully there won't be a need for a variance or anything, because once Chad's got that data and feels comfortable with it, they can make a decision. One minor housekeeping matter is our firm prepared a new covenants, declarations, and restrictions, which we submitted last week to staff. These are like the homeowners association covenants, and I think we provided a copy to the vice mayor, so that has been fixed, and we produced those. So tonight we're going to put on a couple of experts that we weren't available last time we were here. And you'll hear from, again, Mr. Bell, our PE, and from our planner. They may have a little bit to say. You've been introduced to them. Mr. Buchholz is a professional engineer. John Ellis is a PE on geotechnical, and he'll talk about sinkholes and that whole issue about low to moderate that came up last week. He can address that. Misty Service is our planner. She'll be here to briefly address some issues. And like I said, Mike Bell will be presenting a PowerPoint to try to organize it. After that, staff will make its presentation. If we want, we can make a rebuttal. We'll just decide that as it moves forward. And then I'll pass on to you guys to make a decision. You can have discussion amongst yourself, and all of our witnesses, expert witnesses, will be available if you have any questions at that point. So anyway, we thank you for your attention to this important matter, and we hope at the end of the night that you vote to approve the PUD rezoning with those special conditions dealing with lot size and lot area. So I think what I want to do is swear my witnesses, if we could, swear them all at one time so we don't have to do them individually. So I would ask Mike Bell and all of our planner and transportation, could you swear them in, please, Madam Mayor?
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
There were 4 affirmative I do's.
Thank you. Our first witness will be Mike Bell. State your name for the record.
Mike Bell, a professional engineer, civil engineer.
Mr. Bell, do you recall what you testified to on June 6th?
Yes, many
At that
things.
time, we didn't swear the witness, and I would just ask if you would swear affirm the testimony that you gave on the 6th is the truth.
Yes, I do.
So could you make your presentation, please?
Thanks. Thank you, council. Yeah. Again, Mike Bell, professional engineer, civil engineer, been in land development for almost 40 years. Grew up in Keystone Heights. I have a house here in Keystone, but most of my work has been around Florida, specifically in Southwest Florida. I'm here today to kind of give a good summary of where we were and add to it a little bit based on some of the information that we have heard, found along the way. So we've been working on this for about 15 months. Jed has. I haven't been involved that long, but the project's been ongoing for about 15 months. One of the things, again, to repeat what we have done, we advertised for an open house, had a tent on the site, reached out for public comment on the property. We've met with different agencies. We did meet with LRDC early in the process to gain input. To date, this committee has not provided any feedback to us. Our understanding is they have not taken any position on this project, for the record. So I just wanted to make a statement of that. So our request, I think it's been stated, but our request is to ask for zoning of a planned unit development, PUD, for the 13.87 acres, which we are only asking for 3.97 units per acre, which is about 4 units per acre, and the existing zoning density allows 6 units per acre. Next slide, please. Again, the 6 units per acre is based on the current zoning and land use. Next slide, please. Again, everybody by this point knows the location. Sunrise, Paradise Point. Kind of the corner section where the star is at. And I'm going to ask Misty to come up and just kind of restate a couple of things and add to it on our compatibility and comp plan.
Yes, yes. My name is Misty Servia. I am an AICP certified planner. I have been sworn.
Do you recall your testimony on June 6th?
Yes,
And do you swear out that testimony was true?
yes.
And do you have anything else to add?
Yes, so I just wanted to talk about compatibility just a little bit. And, you know, I think I told you before that that's something that planners look at all the time. I am a land use planner with 34 years of experience, both in the private sector and the public sector. And your code even talks about compatibility. It talks about encouraging the harmonious development of land. I think that's the word they use, is harmonious. Compatibility does not mean the same. It means it fits in without a problem. And what I have learned in my career is that compatibility is usually obtained at the external edges of the property. I mean, that is largely how you make a project compatible. This is a single-family subdivision. This is a neighborhood that's planned in an area zoned for single-family homes, where your comprehensive plan for a 30-year vision says single-family homes should go here, and single-family homes are proposed here. So you ask yourself, does it fit in? And the answer is clearly it does. It does fit in. You have single-family homes in this area. You have a municipal park across the street. And where you have some commercial, the auto parts or the auto repair is probably the most difficult one to buffer from. We have the largest buffer of 30 feet, which is a tree preservation area. Your current zoning allows up to 6 dwelling units per acre. We're asking for 3.97. So I just want to say about compatibility that this is compatible. This is responsible growth. This is exactly what your regulations and ordinances anticipate for this land. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mike for a minute.
Thank you, Misty. Next slide, please. I think, again, repeating a little bit of this, but I'll make it quick. How does this benefit the city? A couple of things. It does meet the guidance of the city comprehensive plan. And as Misty stated, your comprehensive plan looks forward for the growth. It's planned for these units to be in place. It's planned for the utilities to be available for this location. And that's all written in your comp plan, so it's spelled out specifically, even to the larger number of units, which were allowed up to 83. So for water and sewer, the capacity of 83 was allotted for this property already. Again, it was annexed into it was annexed into the city in 2008 with future land use for residential of 83 lots. Impact fees to the county and to improve the infrastructure. It's a large number, and we'll talk about it a little bit as we go forward. But just for the schools, the school number is almost $400,000 in impact fees from this project. Again, as the realtors have spoken, the need for not affordable housing with a capital A, but affordable meaning that for entry-level homes or starter homes or workforce housing, there's a need for that in this community. And I think this will provide that, and that's what Century Complete provides, their type of home. Value-added neighborhood, it increases the ad valorem tax base for the city and the county. It encourages economic development. All of your businesses will see a benefit from this. Obviously, growth brings more people, which also brings business to the businesses that are here operating a business every day. It creates construction jobs. I think there's already a contractor or two that's local that will be working on the project. And I think Century Complete has mentioned that some of their subs, and he can ask for more of the subs to be local, that are already working for them within this area. Local merchant sales, same thing, improves the business climate. And with that, next slide, please. So we were asked this originally, why rezone to the PUD? And the planned unit development, as has been stated, allows residential use to be provided within the city using innovative plans designed to create a plan development with more desirable environment than would be possible through the strict application of the conventional zoning district, which would be residential single family. The current zoning allows us to put in, as the builder said, we could put in we did a concept plan that would give us 52 lots that would be 50 feet wide by 135. That's your code today. So they would be less wide, but deeper. So what we had asked for with the PUD was 55 feet wide, but 110 feet deep, because that's what we needed for the building and to have a rear yard and meet all the setbacks. So the benefits to it, as I've explained before, were the tree save areas, the buffers around the exteriors that we aren't required to do. We've left those buffers and put tree save there. We've got the common areas, the park areas within the development, the HOA, wider lots. Just overall, it's a better control of a new development. So that's why we originally started with that. And the real sticking point was the lot depth. We wanted to go wider than your code allows, but the depth, we didn't want to go that deep because it was unnecessary for the builder. So when we first started this project, we had a pre-application meeting and asked, can we go to less deep lots? And the options were a variance or go to a PUD. And the variance didn't sound like an easy road, so we took the PUD route. So we've been working and going down that PUD route for some time, and that's really why we're here for the PUD, is that lot depth is what really triggered us to go through the public hearing process. It triggered us to not do this administratively, and we are where we are. So, you know, the benefits of that we talked about. Misty, you had a couple of other benefits on the PUD you wanted to talk about? On the PUD side?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Mike and I are kind of tag teaming here. And I thought it would be really helpful to just refer to your land development code and exactly what it says. And so if you go to your land development code, it says the objectives of plan development is intended to promote flexibility of design and permit plan diversification and integration while giving the city council the ultimate authority. And I'm paraphrasing. I didn't read that exactly, but that's basically what it says. It says for the benefit of the public health, safety, and welfare, which is true in every community, that's what we're always striving for in zoning, is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And your code says you do that by encouraging maximum flexibility in the proposals which may be considered, while at the same time retaining maximum control by the city council. And here's what it says the objectives are. Promote more efficient and economic uses of land. You've just heard how we're doing that. Encourage a more compatible and harmonious, there's the word, development of contiguous lands. By going planned unit development, we will be providing these buffers with these tree save areas that do promote that harmonious transition. To promote home ownership opportunities for all residents of the city. This does that. To provide flexibility to meet changing needs, technologies, economics, and consumer preferences. I think that this subdivision and neighborhood is going to provide that to the city. To permit a more efficient use of bypass lands. You know, this is what we call in the planning world as infill development. It's a parcel of land that's surrounded by development. This is where we want development as planners, because you don't have to extend all the utilities and roads and everything. It's right there. Be totally controllable based on the needs of the city. That's why we're here. You have the ability to say, we want this, we don't want that. Encourage uses of land which reduce transportation needs and conserve energy and natural resources. Preserve to the greatest extent possible, in a harmonious fashion, existing landscaping features and amenities. Those are the trees. That's what we're talking about, preserving as many as possible in this process. Provide for more usable and suitably located recreational facilities than you would get in a standard land development subdivision. We're doing that. You're getting a neighborhood park in this community because it's planned unit development. Provide for more open spaces and scenic areas other than commonly owned or publicly owned that would otherwise be provided under conventional land development. We just talked about that. And lower development and building costs, by permitting a smaller network of utilities and streets and use of a more economical building types and shared facilities. That is what you're getting here. This is, it's important to bring the units together so there's less cost per unit. You have to think about it like an accountant as well as a planner and an environmentalist and a traffic engineer, because it costs a lot of money for the city to maintain long areas of water and sewer lines. This is much more economical. Accomplish more desirable living and working environments than would be possible through a standard subdivision. Permit the combining of architectural styles and building forms in a planned unit development. You've seen the elevation drawings that we're planning. You've seen what the homes will look like. Provide an environment of stable character compatible with surrounding developments. This is compatible. I think I clearly stated that for the record. And ensure the preservation and maintenance of common areas and open spaces in developments within Keystone Heights. Again, lots of opportunities for preservation. So you can see that this aligns completely with the laws that you have on your records for planned unit development. And that's why we're here, asking for your approval. Mike?
Thank you. Thank you, Misty. So I think we've been through that, why we're here, what the alternatives were if we don't do the planned unit development. I think one, next slide. And then the next slide. Site plan, okay, let's try the next slide. All right, go down a few more. It was supposed to be moved a little. Next slide, next slide. Okay, thank you, that's it. So one thing that we have not talked about that may have kept us from being here is in your code is a section 17120 defining architecturally integrated subdivisions. And I don't want to have to read the whole thing, but I think it's very, very important that I do. So within an architecturally integrated subdivision, the developer may create lots and construct buildings without regard to minimum lot size or width, except that each lot must be sufficient size and dimension that it can support the structure proposed to be located on it, consistent with all other applicable requirements of this chapter. So, the number of dwelling units in an architecturally integrated subdivision may not exceed the maximum density authorized for the tract, which is 83. To the extent reasonably practicable, in residential subdivisions, the amount of land saved by creating smaller lots shall be set aside as usable open space. Lot boundary setback requirements shall apply where and to the extent that the subdivided tract abuts land that is not part of the subdivision. But 0 side yard setbacks may be allowed on interior lots. And again, this is your straight code. This is not PUD. This is allowed under the zoning code. So again, if we work towards this originally, we probably wouldn't be in front of you today, because this gives us the right to look at varying lot sizes per your code. And it states the purpose of this section is to provide flexibility consistent with the public health and safety and without increasing overall density to the developer who subdivides property and constructs buildings on the lots created in accordance with a unified and coherent plan of development. In our mind, what we're providing is a planned unit development, which is unified and coherent. It has an HOA. It has covenants and restrictions. It also has an architectural review board, which would meet that definition of architecturally integrated. So again, we still would like to move forward with the PUD because we are here, but I think honestly, the beginning of this process to go to a lot depth reduction, I think was in your code all along, and we may have missed it, the staff may have missed it, but based on this section, which is standalone, I think we would be able to move forward either way. And as was stated before, we can do a layout. We go back to straight zoning. We could get 152 lots that meet your residential single family. But if we created an architecturally integrated subdivision, I think we could go higher than that based on this part of the code. Oh, I'm sorry, 52. Yeah. Now, so I'm sorry to ask you to go back up a few slides. One more. Okay, so again, not to rehash the site plan, but we did have buffers around the property that were not necessary, were not required per the code, per the PUD or per the straight zoning. Again, I think that and the recreation area is one thing that we really feel makes this property different than the rest. Next slide, please. And again, I won't go through all of the reasons and the site analysis and design. We've done that. Let's go to the next slide. Again, this was a representative slide showing 4 different neighborhoods of a typical section, which will be similar size, shape, and nature of our roadway and curb section with sidewalk. Our sidewalk will be located on just one side, as shown in the top right and the bottom right. Next slide, please. Next slide. So Terrell had explained where we are with the tree variance. I'm going to add a little bit to that. We applied early for a tree variance, hoping to be a little more proactive and be able to work through that. It has delayed and delayed and delayed as far as getting to hear the variance. So it became combined with this PUD application and actually has maybe slowed down the whole process a little bit. So the last time we were here, next slide, please. Last time we were here, we told you we had provided and obtained a tree location survey, as shown here. Next slide. And that we had submitted to staff a tree mitigation calculation proposal and provided a spreadsheet to them. And it was being reviewed at the last time we had a meeting. We didn't get any information back until last Wednesday. And the information back was they didn't quite understand what we were proposing. There was some questions. And so Mr. Ducro had decided to look, and where we were at last time we met, 287 trees that were necessary to meet the 1-to-1 mitigation. And Jed had proposed that he would provide $10,000 contribution to the tree fund the last time we met. Early last week, Jed had decided to let the city know, and he let them know, staff know, that he would put those 287 trees on site and not provide the $10,000 to the city. And basically that puts it as a wash for the tree mitigation calculations, and just to get over it at a cost to him of, I'm not sure the cost, but a large number. He just wanted to move it on. So he proposed that to the city. So the question was then, well, this calculation appears to be a good approach, and then there became questions on each one of the cells in the spreadsheet from staff. So one of them is an assumption on dead and dying trees, and so I think my understanding was we were there with this being a 1-to-1 mitigation in our minds. There's still some questions, and they want some professionals to help fill in a couple of those blanks. So Mr. Ducro will go get an arborist to help fill in and provide a little more expertise. I'm not arborist. We don't have one on staff. Therefore, I think we were there, but we need to confirm a couple of numbers in this form to show how we're going to be 1-to-1 mitigation for the trees. So with that in mind, the approach was to abate this at this time, only for the reason that we didn't want to just withdraw it and then have to start over if we start dealing with staff when we go in for our environmental permit and our construction plans for the subdivision. We will do it the standard way that's required with the environmental permit, and we'll go through the same process. We'll have better backup for a number or two that Chad had asked about, and we're hopeful that that will go smoothly, and we'll make the same presentation to them at that time. But either way, I think we're as close as we can be with the 1-to-1 ratio in our minds today. So again, that's really the background and history. We didn't just pull it so we didn't have to talk about it. We've done a lot of work. Jed's made a large commitment, and that 1-to-1 is the commitment. So it's a lot of talk to say we've abated it, but that's just for the record. Regarding schools, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of comments from the public. There's a lot of social media talking about the school crowding, that there's no room in the schools need help. There was a concurrency application filed through the city for this project. The school board letter came back. The school board reservation letter was approved for the elementary school for 12 students, for the junior high, senior high for 11 students. Both said they had capacity for this project. So there was no question about the schools that we need to address. The only thing we need to address is pay them $7,034 per home in impact fees, to a tune of $386,870. So that's the contribution that's required, but the staff, and I think it's in your package, school board concurrency reservation letter number 2022000001KH is in your record, in your package. The last two items I think we're going to talk about is traffic and the depressional area sinkhole discussion. And I don't know if you want to lead that, and I can surely add to it as needed if you have some questions.
We would call Jeff Buckles. You were sworn earlier.
Yes, sir.
Do you hold a professional engineering degree or license in transportation?
Transportation engineer, yes.
Transportation engineer. Did you evaluate the traffic from this project on local roads within the city's jurisdiction?
Yes.
And will the development and build out adversely affect the level of service on any city road?
City road, no.
And do you know that Mr. Duckrow has agreed to coordinate with the county and the DOT if they want to on their roads?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Do you have anything else to add? Feel free. Thank you.
Sure. Jeff Buckholtz, my office is in Mandarin section of Jacksonville. I've been there since '88, and we do traffic studies all the time. I do them. And this is a rather small development for what we usually do. Most of our studies lately have been in the hundreds of houses in places like McClenny and Callahan and Yulee, and so this is a rather small one, but you know, definitely development has been hot, especially in the last year here in freedom-loving Florida. So we took a look at what the traffic is expected to generate. We have standard rates that we expect these single-family homes to generate. We decide how they're going to go on the network. We do traffic counts, and we add those traffic counts into the expected traffic that the development will generate. And then we analyze the intersections around it to see how it's going to perform. And we write a report, like we did here, and submit it for your consideration. One thing that I am finding with some of the developments that we're finding that are built out is that what the Institute of Transportation Engineers expect for a development to generate is considerably higher than what's actually generating. I think what's happening is people from up north, Yankees like me, are coming down here and buying homes and holding on to them and not necessarily moving into them. So I think you can expect this probably not to generate as much traffic as my report says, because that seems to be what's happening now. It's a kind of an unusual effect, but it seems to be borne out by the counts we're getting at developments that are fully built out. And we go and count, and wow, the traffic is only half of what it's supposed to be. So that's it as far as the traffic study goes. Be happy to answer any questions concerning it.
Two questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last witness is John Ellis. And you were previously sworn in.
Yes, sir, I was.
And could you explain basically your professional background?
I am a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, University of Florida, and I am a civil engineer also.
And did your firm do the geotechnical analysis for this development and this site?
We did.
And I want to just focus, because it came up at the last meeting, I don't believe your firm was here, but on page 4 of the geotechnical report that was submitted, there's a section 5 dealing with sinkhole our opinion that the probability of sinkhole formation at the subject site is considered to be low to moderate. And there were questions about what that meant. Could you explain that, please, to the council and then present any other statements that you have?
I'll be glad to explain it. We, obviously on the site, there's a depression, small depression. We did a boring right next to it, went 60 foot deep all the way into the rock. Did not find any evidence of an active type, sinkhole type situation. The soils were really compact, firm, didn't have any loose raveling soils or didn't have any loss of drilling fluid or anything like that. We've done work around sinkholes in the past. I have a large drilling company too I own, and we do borings all over the southeast. So I pretty much understand what, sinkhole conditions are. And this site did not appear to have really any sinkhole activity. Although, being an engineer, so we put that thing in there low to moderate. Low to moderate, basically, I asked a couple other sinkhole repair contractors what they would use in a situation like this, because we know there are sinkholes around this area in general, a lot of your lakes. A lot of people report sinkholes, and they're listed on the state site as public information as sinkholes, within the area of Keystone. So there is a possibility, when we do a soil boring, it's only about 4 inches in diameter, and we kind of statistically do them throughout the site. So we get a good overall condition of, what we think we're going to encounter. In this case, we did not, encounter any sinkhole type soils or conditions that might lead to there might be a sinkhole, but we still kind of, I want to say low. Low meaning that it may be a possibility, but a small possibility. If you're going to ask me, what that means, it just means it's probably not going to happen, but in case it does happen, you're kind of somewhat warned, because you do have an old type of depression on the site that's there. It doesn't appear to be active. It doesn't appear to be a problem, so it's very small. Do you have any questions about?
When you compare that to across the street or down the road, the low to moderate here, are you speaking generalities on this property or the area?
I'm only referencing, our report only references this property. We've done other soil borings around the site. I believe the same, we've done other borings in the vicinity in the past on other jobs and things like that. There is, obviously, you do have sinkholes that show up periodically in your area, but on this site, it does not appear that there's going to be any based on the soil borings that we performed at the site. Typically what we did is we did a random amount of soil borings in the lots and things like that in the roadways and in the pond areas, so we kind of spaced them out. And you can look at the plan if you've seen it before. We actually spread them out all over the site. We did the deep boring right next to where we potentially thought there was a sinkhole, and it doesn't appear to be, a typical type of sinkhole. I'm not sure if somebody dug a hole there a long time ago, why it's there, but there's obviously a depression there, but we drilled right next to it, and it doesn't appear to be a sinkhole where, we were drilling at, so anyway.
Thank you, and he'll be available for questions. Mike, you want to finish?
Yeah, just one more thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Okay, all right.
One thing I was going to add too is regarding the sinkhole, Mr. Hart, we did overlay the depressed area with the lot layout, and 2 of the lots do fall within that area. So as we move forward, we will reconfigure the lots so that they won't be directly over that depressed area. So,
lots?
oh, Jed, 37, 38?
37, 38.
If they had enough. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's all we have. Thank you for your time, and I think what we would recommend is perhaps have the city make their presentation, and then we'll do questions, or do you want to do questions now? How do you want to do it?
Well, I guess it depends on council. If council has questions, keep in mind you have the ability to ask questions of the expert in the nature of a cross-examination, and then they can reply and provide rebuttal. You can either do that now after hearing the presentation, or we can listen to city staff and then our engineer ask questions of our side as well as their side at the same time. It's up to you.
My preference would be hear from the staff to see if there are any inconsistencies and go from there.
I agree.
Thank you.
All right, we have staff, oh, sorry.
Let's swear in our people as well.
Can you all group 4? offering any testimony today, Mr. Fernando? Are you going to be offering testimony today? Do you all swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Let the record show all three said yes in the affirmative. Ms. Bukowski, you starting us off?
Yes, Madam Mayor. We have met with Mr. Decker and his team several times, and I just wanted to address a couple of questions that council as a whole has asked me individually over the past several months as we've talked about this. So page 3 of the ordinance, I would like to address section 4 items A through I, and then I will leave section 3 and any other questions that you have concerning the potholes or traffic or anything else to our engineer. But going specifically to section 4, special conditions A through I, 55 single-family lots at 3.96 units per acre. This number was provided as dividing the acreage of 13.87 acres divided by the 55 homes that is being plotted or requested tonight. If you look at our comprehensive plan, it states that there is a 6 units per acre maximum, and it's believed that that number has come to that conclusion by taking the square footage of 1 acre, and if you divide that by the minimum lot requirements stated in section 17-99 of 6500, you get 6.7. You can't have 0.7 unit or 0.7 of a unit, so the 7 was dropped off, and you have 6 units per acre. When you take the math of the square footage that's being proposed of 6,050, and you divide that by the square footage of an acre, you get actually 7.2 units per acre. You drop off the 2 because you can't have 0.2 of a unit. So that's increasing the density in that manner of just speaking purely square footage of the lot comparatively to the code. The next item is the lot width. Our code requires a 50-foot lot width. They are proposing 55. The next item is lot depth. Our code requires a minimum of 135 feet. They are proposing 110 feet. The lot area minimum, our code requires 6,500 square feet. They are proposing 6,050 square feet. Item E, our code requires 35% lot coverage maximum. They are proposing a lot coverage maximum of 45%. F is the setbacks, the minimum of 5 feet with a combined feet of 15 on the side yard. That is compliant with our code. Rear yard setback is 20 feet with our code, and that is compliant with what they're proposing. The front yard setback is 20 feet, and that is compliant with what our code states. And then the maximum building height is 35 feet in both what they're proposing and what our code states. And so I've had several questions of what the difference is of a straight single family versus what's being proposed. Those are the differences.
Can I ask one clarifying question in that
Yes, ma'am.
math? Is this square footage, 6,500, is that assuming that infrastructure is already present for that acre?
That would be per unit, so infrastructure would not be imposing on that unit.
It would not be imposing on the unit, it would be assuming that a road was there, or,
So that a road, so typically, the best way to explain it is that a road is maintained, owned by the city. So, and there's in the code stating that 6,500 square feet would be of the property that's being developed, that home, that specific unit. So you wouldn't have a road that's owned by the city within that acreage.
so then it would be true then that the 83 units that they purport to be able to build upon would not include the infrastructure required to reduce that number, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so just, I wanted to make sure they were apples to apples. So there's no infrastructure with 83 units. It's assuming you could just divide the lot up, and however you could get to your back unit is how you would get there. So what we're saying is the 6,500 square foot lot would have some type of infrastructure, and therefore a comp plan would allow 6 units per acre. Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything else.
You don't have anything else. Mr. Richard, do you have anything?
I don't have a presentation to share with you, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have tonight.
Do you guys all want to hear what a recommendation might be from staff?
Yeah, I think that would be very informative. I'd like to hear what they have to say.
So, your thoughts about the PUD? Mr. Richard?
I'm not here to comment
Okay.
on my personal opinion regarding the PUD. I'm here to provide third-party review of it.
Okay. Staff, do you have any recommendations?
This plan unit development does comply with the code in many ways, and it's a question really of council on if the reduction in lot size, given the tree preservation, is something that council would propose or would allow.
I've heard the number 52 used, that would, if it was a straight development, that would be the number of lots. Do you agree or disagree with that? Or do we know?
Make sure I understand your question, Mr. Hart.
They've used the 52, their experts have used 52 lots if it was a straight development rather than a PUD, rather than 55. Is that sound like it's in the ballpark, Mr. Richard?
I believe it's in the ballpark, yes, because
Okay.
you have to look at the infrastructure necessary, and it really comes down to how you do a site plan and development. There's a lot of different ways to do the geometry, and so depending on how it's laid out, you can not manipulate, but you can basically form a subdivision and parcel something out differently depending on how your ultimate desired income is.
So you don't
outcome.
you don't disagree with their conclusion that 52 would be the magic number if they didn't have a PUD? You don't disagree with that statement?
I wouldn't say I disagree with that statement, but I would like just to say that it really comes down to what their goals and desired future outcome is, and then what the PUD may or may not allow, and as well as the flexibility of council to work with different geometry of the lot depth.
Okay, thanks.
And then another question. I want to go back to the question of the HOA providing greater control with a PUD. Isn't that why we have code enforcement?
Code enforcement can enforce the codes that is outlined within our ordinances. An HOA essentially would give its own regulations that would be self-regulated. We cannot go above and beyond the code, but it will allow them to self-regulate whatever stipulations that they put in place.
Okay.
So their regulations can be more restrictive than our code, but they can't be more relaxed than our code. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
That's a question to talk to our council.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then I did want to point out for the record, I know you're paying an incredible amount for the school impact fee, but you did pay no city impact fee at all, right? Just want to make sure people hear there is no impact fee charged by the city for your development or any development inside city limits.
I don't think we have any, so.
We don't have it.
We do not have impact fees.
We don't have it, correct. Just a positive point for building in Keystone Heights. You will pay 4 mills. Any other questions? Yes, you can ask questions now if you like.
As far as I know, that's,
Okay, so I would like to figure out where we are.
I think there are questions all around at this point from what I'm hearing.
Yes, there are questions.
So if there's questions for the applicant or any of the people that have testified on behalf of the applicant or questions for staff, now would be that time.
Okay.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Question for the guy that did the traffic study. Was that before school let out? Was that right, recent, or was that during?
We did the
school?
counts in April.
Back in
School was
April?
in session.
Okay, was that a full day? Like school opens and during the?
Yeah, what we
when
do
it's closing?
in typical traffic study, we look at the AM peak period and the PM peak period, weekday. That's what we analyze. So the AM school tends to overlap with that, because those are the busiest times of the day. Okay. School activity tends to overlap with the AM peak period, which is between about 6:30 to 9 AM. But the school tends to let out a little earlier than the PM peak happens, which is usually 3:30 to 6. So, you know, the school effect is in there, but has a bigger effect than AM and PM.
Okay. While you were out there,
Yeah, I actually participated in the count, so
You
I
did in
was
the
actually
count.
out there watching.
okay, great. Were you at all concerned that there aren't sidewalks leading into this subdivision? Kids walking in the streets and stuff, or did that?
Well, obviously
cross your
sidewalks are always
mind?
nice. You know, there's nothing.
Sure.
They're always nice, sidewalks are always nice. I didn't see any, obviously, current pedestrians, I don't think at all. Some bicycle activity.
But there's no houses there yet either, though, right?
Right, yeah, I mean, there are some along Paradise Point and in that area. But obviously, you know, I can't argue against sidewalks, that's always helpful, those are always helpful.
Did traffic congestion and stuff toward the garage in that area, that?
Well, I mean, the word congestion is very relative, you know. When I see congestion, I think of really bad
Jacksonville,
thing.
I know.
It's actually even St. Augustine or Green Cove Springs, but it really, on a scale of what I typically see along there with the commercial driveways, there were not really any issues with the commercial driveways that I saw.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Brown, you have questions?
I'd like to speak to the gentleman about the sinkhole real quick. I know you say it's not an active sinkhole. I personally was at the one in Park of the Palms when it took a house back in the early 80s. But my concern is, what's the chances of that thing activating when you start putting heavy equipment in and building roads and stuff? Is that like a 50-50 chance? Or can you even answer that question?
I can answer it.
Okay.
It really, your whole site, I think you'll actually have a copy of our soil report. Did you actually receive it? Okay.
It's,
I mean, your whole site, if you didn't know it, has really loose sands on the surface, which is real typical for around here. We actually recommended in the report before they can build anything, they need to really go out there and just compact it. I mean, just really go to it. If, in your case, what would trigger a sinkhole here would be a significant, you know, you just don't have it here. Water going through the soil, hitting, you know, the loose stuff and maybe causing, you know, or the water dropping dramatically. Well, here the water is down anywhere from, I don't know, 5 to 15 feet, probably below the ground. It's not a problem. The construction on site, it probably will not trigger anything. It will compact. They're going to compact the soils before they do anything. That will make it a lot better, you know, as far as potentially, if there was a problem, it might show up then. But we drilled as close as we can get to that depression, and we went down into the rock, you know, several feet. I mean, there's lime rock, you know, about, I think we hit 56.5, 57 feet. And we're in it, it's very dense. There's no voids above it, which is, we typically would have voids and stuff like that, or really loose soils. It's dense all the way to the rock, so it doesn't appear to be a problem. I mean, maybe at one time in the past, somebody went out and took soil off the property and, you know, dug a hole. I don't know. It's there, it's a depression, so we treat it as if it potentially could have been a sinkhole at one time, a long time ago. But the soils do not show that it's a sinkhole, you know, where we drilled at right next to it. We got as close as we could, so.
Thank you.
All right.
I got a quick, sir?
Okay.
So, planned pipeline raising the water level around here, water in our lakes and stuff, you don't think that would have any adverse effect on that sinkhole?
No, I don't. I think it'd be great if your water could come back. When it drops down is when it's the worser effect, and more sinkholes tend to show up as it drops. No, if it comes back up, I don't think it'll be a problem at all. It actually, as the water table comes up, the soils actually become, you know, like they can actually, it's hard to explain this, but the water in the soil makes the soil lighter. So it's actually less stress on the soils as the water comes up. As the water goes down, the soils become heavier. And that's when you start seeing, as the water table drops, you see the sinkhole activity kind of increase. So tendency is so.
Right.
All right.
Would you put your family in a home
in this
in
neighborhood.
that area, on the lots adjacent in that area?
I don't think there's a problem about living, I mean, if I wanted to live here, yes, sir, I could put my family here, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Ellis, could we just revisit briefly the terms low to moderate? You've defined low as being small. What does that mean? What is small? And then what is moderate?
Well, like I was saying, we treat it's really hard to define it, but
Okay.
since we saw a depression on the site, we just assume it was a sinkhole at some time in the past. There are sinkholes when we look at radiuses around the site, there's one within a quarter mile, I think, northeast of the site, just across 100. There's one that's documented in the state. So there's other places around, these lakes were all part of the sinkhole, that we have, so a lot of them, so.
Can you render an expert opinion as to whether or not you think that any sinkhole will develop? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but based on your examination of the soils, what would the risk be, let's say, if I was going to build a house there?
Well,
Can you tell me? Yeah, moderate, high.
Very, very, very low, like
Okay.
non-existent.
All right.
But we don't say zero just because of the history around, this area of the county does have sinkholes that.
Well, and sometimes when you render an opinion, you have to leave yourself a little wiggle room. I understand that. So that's just part of giving an opinion, I'm sure.
It's very
so,
low.
But you should say the risk is quite low.
Quite low, and during construction is probably, if something was to show up, it would show up during all the
Okay.
compaction and, and filling operations and stuff like that, so.
It's been testified too that lots 37 and 38 are affected by the existing old sinkhole. Where is that in relation to, say, the center of the lot? Is that, in your opinion, would that render the lots unbuildable?
Who has the plan?
I can show you.
Yeah, you can show.
Okay.
Let me show you. So, the depression is probably these two lots. Right in that low area.
Yeah.
So I believe it's those two. And
Yeah, and typically, it does affect these two lots, and they're in about the center, and it crosses between the two lots, so the two lots are affected.
Okay.
So,
Counsel, you want to mark that and leave it with the clerk?
yeah, we can.
Okay, let's do that.
There's
Okay, it's your best
There's the
estimate.
depressed area.
it
So
it
37,
basically
38.
splits the property line between the two lots.
Okay,
So it's
yeah.
pretty much taken right in the center.
And we have had testimony that that is a sinkhole, so I think that's been
we
established.
assume it's a sinkhole because it's depression. I mean, it does not appear to be just because the soil borings don't show it could be a sinkhole, but it,
Okay. I'm going to just put a number 1 on this and pass it down to be filed with the clerk. May I do that with this, counsel?
Mr. Hart, while we're on that topic, and I think one of the reasons this came up, because there was perhaps a need for clarification, because on page 7 of the geotechnical report at which we're discussing, paragraph 2, the paragraph begins with, an existing sinkhole is located within the southeast portion of the property. The sinkhole has approximate dimensions of 56 feet by 30 feet wide by 6 to 10 feet deep. And so that's a discussion that we had several months ago, and that's why I think that the gentleman is here to discuss his views. However, because that paragraph starts with that language, and now it's being referred to as a depression, there's a little bit of disparity as far as the classification of what we're discussing within the subject parcel.
I think they've made an admission with their documentation and their testimony that it in fact is a sinkhole. I'm satisfied with that. I think that's a given. It could be part of the findings of fact.
Sir?
yes, sir.
But we would all agree if the dirt was removed mechanically or whatever for fill somewhere else, like a borrow pit, we'd be not having this discussion.
I mean, I just said
But
that
if it-
because potentially we see things like that on properties sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Some point in the past, somebody might have excavated soil, taken it somewhere else. We don't know. Obviously, if this was a sinkhole type situation, it could be fixed. There's a lot of ways to fix it. It's not very difficult to fix a situation like this. So the soils do not appear to be a problem right next to it. So it's just a very small area. If it is a sinkhole, it's a very small area. It's limited. It's very, you can walk across the site and just tell it's there, so.
questions of this witness?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, do you have any other questions?
I just have a question and a comment regarding the declaration of covenants. There are basically two classes of members, Class A, Class B. Class A are the buyers, Class B is a developer. The developer has the right to assign his interest at any time. I'm wondering why that's in there, and if it's strictly to satisfy a mortgage lender or something like that, that would make sense. Otherwise, why would it be such a broad statement, and why would that be in there?
The covenants and restrictions that we drafted are typical, used all over, at least Northeast Florida, which is the region. And the way they usually work out is the developers in control of the homeowners association at the beginning.
Right.
And then, so that the developer can build the lots and get control of the streets and the roads. And then once, there's usually a trigger where there's so many people living in the homes that the developer's not in control of the lots at that point.
It's at 90%.
And then it turns over, and the people that live there become in control of the association. So that's what it was intended to do. There's nothing nefarious about it or unusual.
Well, did you draw this? Very good job for your client if you did.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have no further questions.
Ms. Constable, do you have any questions of any of the witnesses?
Has there been a, can everybody hear me? Has there been a, anybody looking at the wildlife that will be displaced in this area? Anybody here with the developer that has looked at that?
Again, Mike Bell, for the record, civil engineer. There was a study presented and provided to staff early on with the application. There was an environmental study done for the habitat as well as species. The only findings were gopher tortoises, which are on the north property line on the berm along the Clay Electric power line. And based on the site plan, it appears that all of those burrows will be outside of the development area. There's a 25-foot radius that has to be made. If we do find one that is closer, they will be permitted in accordance with the state regulations.
Okay,
For relocation.
thank you. That's it.
Any other questions? Any other questions of any of the witnesses?
Mayor, I was just waiting for council to conclude their questions. I did want to ask Mr. Bell a little bit, since he brought up the issue of the architecturally integrated subdivisions, just so you can answer. Because I think it kind of muddies the water when you brought up the 17-120. You're not suggesting that your application is an architecturally integrated subdivision, are you?
I don't know that that is what we're asking. I think I wanted to state that that was an allowable subdivision.
Well then,
within the.
as you looked at our code, I'm guessing you also read Appendix B that says in an architecturally integrated subdivision, there's no land clearing.
No land clearing.
Right, no tree. You can't, level 2 permit requires no land clearing.
So how would you do a subdivision with no land clearing or build homes?
Well, it's for land that's already cleared, or land that doesn't require that to build a home. But that's not, I just want to make sure that what your application is, that's not what you're talking about.
No, that's not what we're talking about, but that's
Okay.
not my understanding of the code, but again.
Okay. That's all, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, it wasn't to muddy the water, but it was a whole nother section that referred to the availability to make the lot sizes based on the building sizes.
I understand, but there's, like I said, there's the appendix to that that you didn't reference. Thanks.
Thank you. At this point, should we open a public hearing and allow individuals who are here to come up and share their opinions?
So, Madam Mayor, yes, I would say that you should solicit any sort of public input or any other, the term of art that lawyers use, or competent and substantial evidence. However, in doing that, I just want to caution the council and just make sure that you understand that as you evaluate information, you're evaluating what's been provided to you as far as the application. You're evaluating the testimony that's been presented that is essentially presented by experts. You don't have to be an expert, but someone that is skilled within their field, that when people stand up and they give opinions to you, that is not based on their profession or something that would be considered competent and substantial. Realtors are a good example of things that can be considered based upon the application criteria. But if someone gets up and hypothetically, do they feel like it's going to add more traffic to the city? That feeling does not controvert what you have as a traffic engineer before you providing testimony and evidence. So just be careful as you weigh what's presented to you. Now, sometimes public comment may trigger a question in you as the decider to ask the experts follow-up questions. So you can use it for that, but I just want to make sure it's clear that just because someone makes a comment in public comment or as part of the public hearing, that's not automatically what is considered by the courts competent and substantial evidence. Thank you.
Does everyone understand?
Pretty much.
Ms. Rakowski, and again, for the applicant side, if you would come up and state your name and your address, and then swear that you'll tell the truth, and pledge that oath, then we can go through the entire group who wants to speak. Ms. Rakowski, do you have the first speaker?
Mr. Jason Kotinski.
I should open the hearing, right?
Yes.
Yes. Let's do that. Open the hearing for public comment, public testimony. Can we say again the name?
Mr. Jason Kotinski, and he will be followed by Ms. Gail Outen.
You'll have 3 minutes to share your comments.
That I'm supposed to do.
No,
swear
you
to-
don't have to.
I could have sworn that they said that, but okay. I'm Jason Kozinski. I live at 935 Southeast 46th Loop, which is part of Paradise Lake. I actually own about a third or 40% of the smaller portion of underneath Paradise Lake, if you consider that the land. I have a PhD in mathematics. I lectured at the university for about 10 years. My wife is an occupational therapist. She's been working here for many years. It's very likely that you have a neighbor or friend that she has treated. I had, in Gainesville, I had and my wife has seen the same thing throughout the years. We had the shiny new neighborhood with the A+ school, and that lasted for a while. Then financial turmoil hit. The houses, they began to deteriorate. There were foreclosures. Everybody wanted to allow new things. People started to rent. They allowed students in. The neighborhood deteriorated. And next thing I knew, it was the neighborhood next to that. That was the shiny new neighborhood with the A+ and A+ school, and that's where we went. We moved to the next suburb. And at some point after doing this several times, you get to realize that this rat race isn't worth what it's cracked up to be. And so my wife had fallen in love with this area and the people, and we moved out here. And this sounds like exactly like the kind of thing that we were trying to get away from. We actually, last time, to correct the record, there were 3 outlets that were mentioned from the subdivision. There's a 4th one, which is to go out Sunrise, and then back on Paradise Point, 46th Loop, and it comes out at the S&G gas station between that and Firepower Coffee. You can also take this neighborhood out onto Speedville Road by 52nd. And a lot of people have been doing that. And my wife wanted me to make sure I had so much to say, but we have a lot of people tearing up and down that road. It's, of course, our part is in Bradford County, but I don't believe communities are made by county lines. But they tear up and down that road, and we have kids with they didn't see any people. I don't know if they went down our road. We have people on kids on dirt bikes. A woman likes to walk her baby in the stroller. Golf carts, all kinds of activity over there. And we've had multiple people tear right through our driveway. My wife won't let my daughter go out to check the mailbox. And so I just want you to realize that there is another traffic situation that is out there. Also, real quick, my child was told she couldn't go to Keystone because there was no room. So I'm not sure why they're acting like there is.
Next, we have Miss Gail Outen. That'll be followed by Mr. Pete Sutton.
Gail Outen, 1204 Southeast 46th Loop, Keystone. Yeah. One of the public comments 2 weeks ago alerted us about the danger of a sinkhole, always a sinkhole. And I know there's been some confusion and we can't really hear everything back there, so may I go ahead with my comment on, okay. So my comments are based on facts from official sources that verify that statement. The gap in the ground is not sealed by an accumulation of sand, clay, pebbles, or rock, because water will flow through any of those materials. Regardless of efforts to permanently remediate a sinkhole, it continues to evolve until the seeping water erodes the supporting limestone layer and causing complete collapse. Land development and retention ponds accelerate the formation of sinkholes. And this is again from official sources. It is noteworthy that part of the planned retention pond is located on top of the sinkhole, according to what I can see from the drawings. We do not know the day or the hour, but we do know the certainty of the event sometime. The existing sinkhole, quote, takes the decision to a whole new level where concern for human safety supersedes all else.
Ms. Outen, you made a reference to official sources. Do you have anything that can you go back to the? So because you referenced official sources, can you say what those sources are?
Yes, absolutely. One of them is the U.S. Gov Geology. Another website, Sinkholes of Clay County, and that's University of Florida information, and Smithsonian.
Thank you. And counsel, so that may then develop questions within you for the geotech expert. Thank you, Ms. Outen.
Any questions? Any questions for the geologist? Okay. She mentioned something to me that was important, and she said that water could flow through any of those materials at any time. And so, you know, we're real experts out here about sand and how sand hold water or don't hold water. Was there any evidence in your findings that there was a river that flowed underneath at any point in time? Because, you know, I believe some of these boys who grew up in this area, they know some things. They may not be, you know, professional engineers, but when you hear a story from someone and they say a river runs through it, I mean, that really makes me want to ask the question, does a river really run through that sinkhole at any depth?
And I suspect as part of the rebuttal, the applicant may want to have Mr. Ellis address that.
Well, why don't we just do it now?
Well, I don't mind. I just don't know if you're going to get more of it if you want to combine it.
So for these good old boys in our neighborhood, I'll ask that question. Thank you.
Ms. Sutton?
Please come up.
Next, we'll have Mr. Justin Williams following.
Thank you. My name's Pete Sutton. I live at 815 Southeast 46th Loop in Keystone Heights. As a neighbor, I'm very concerned about this PUD. I do not share the same vision that the developer presented in the compatibility and a harmonious acceptance in the neighborhood that exists. My plea to you before you vote is that give this some consideration, because once you make this decision, if you were to vote for this project, in my opinion, you're going to open the floodgates. Keystone Heights will never be the same again. And as a neighborhood, we don't want to be a Middleburg 2. I've been there. That's why I moved to Keystone. I hope you think about the compatibility of who we are and the reason why Keystone is such a jewel. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Justin Williams, and he will be followed by Mr. Rob Shackelford.
My name is Justin Williams. I reside at 160 Southwest Magnolia Avenue. I just want to reiterate a few of the things I mentioned last week. This sinkhole, they said they drilled adjacent to it. I don't understand why they didn't drill directly inside this depression, as they're now calling it. I can poke myself in my cheek all I want. I'm not getting anywhere. I poke myself in my lips, I might end up in my mouth. Sorry, that's a bad reference, but anybody who has ever dug a hole and built a sandcastle at the beach as a small child knows. You dig a hole in sand, everything around it will end up in that hole as well. It's not just where the hole itself is. Eventually the surrounding will end up in that hole. Also, I wanted to mention, they've had experts check this existing property. What happens when you remove the vegetation from above the soil line, which will change how the rainfall affects the soil that's already there. When they go in to clear these lots, they're not only taking off the top vegetation above the soil line, they're going to dig out the existing root structure. That is going to change the way that the soil is impacted through drainage and everything else. As other people have mentioned, sand does drain very well. Once you remove the vegetation from below that soil line, it's going to change the way that sand moves as the rain falls, drain, and everything else. Unfortunately, I will try to look it up as quick as I can. As far as a reference to erosion due to slight changes, I will admit this article does reference permafrost, which we do not have here, thankfully. But there is a crater in Russia. I will spell it because I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It is Batagiaika. That land in Russia was forested. They only removed the canopy above the ground, but that allowed the permafrost below to melt. And as that permafrost melted, this crater has opened extensively and swallowed many acres of ground. I don't think that there has been enough studies because I don't know of any studies, but I'm sure that hasn't been taken into consideration once that vegetation is moved. Drilling a core sample on a piece of existing property does not say anything as to how it will change in the future, and these developers and builders will be long gone. Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. Rob Shackelford, and he will be followed by Mr. Robert Johnson.
Rob Shackelford, 7105 Paradise Point Drive. The Land Development Code gives you all the protection from future legal action initiated by the developer and the ability to either fully deny this 55-unit PUD or greatly reduce the size of the project due to certain factors: public safety, environmental. This 55-house subdivision will 100% guarantee a public safety crisis at the intersection of Sunrise and Highway 100. Per the article in the Monitor dated April 28, 2022, the developer, Jed Duckrow, clearly states that this is a broken intersection and clearly states that it's up to the FDOT to install the traffic light. Also mentioned in the same edition, but discussing a less densely populated intersection, Speedville Road and Highway 100, the entire Bradford County Commission, the Bradford County Sheriff, and the state representative for Bradford County all state, and I quote, "These efforts have failed largely due to the unwillingness of the Florida DOT to recognize the significance of the public safety threat at this intersection. It also states, "It is our sincere hope that you will instruct your staff," that's the FDOT staff, "to reconsider their position on this matter and take the necessary action to ensure the safety," and pay attention to this, "and quite literally the lives of our citizens." The point is, you're not getting a stoplight. I'm just telling you that right now. Bradford County's been pleading for it. They're not getting it. You're not getting one at Sunrise in the foreseeable future. All right? The public safety crisis has greatly increased also due to 105,964 square feet of heavily used commercial property at this intersection. Let that sink in. Almost 106,000 square feet of commercial property that most citizens in Keystone use on a regular basis is located at this intersection, and the developer wants to add hundreds and hundreds of more vehicles per day. The environmental issues. There is an existing sinkhole on the property. The person I've talked to that's been in business in this town for decades, has lived in this town for decades, saw it. It was 25 to 30 feet deep. It had a dried creek bed in the bottom of it. And the reason it's now a depression is because the past owner in the past brought in fill dirt and filled it in. And you can see if it has a depression, it's already settled back down. So, and if I recall, they did 20 to 21 4-inch soil borings on an almost 14-acre tract of land. I could take 20 or 21 darts and hit those cabinets behind you, but if I'm not hitting the void that may or may not exist underneath the ground that hasn't opened up yet, how would I know that there isn't a potential for a future sinkhole? Lake Brooklyn, I saw the same sinkhole when I was a boy in Park of the Palms, Jed's sinkhole, Paradise Lake, Turtle Pond. Put it on a map, it's almost a straight line. Thank you.
Robert Johnson. He will be followed by Mr. Keith Hatch.
Hey there, my name's Robert Johnson. I live at 7314 County Road 315, Keystone Heights. I'm not located directly in the town, but as we know, the squeaky wheels are always going to get heard. So I think ultimately what you guys are voting on is looking at the pros and cons for what this is going to do for our community. Just because it's not the normal development that you ride around Keystone and you see the spaced out houses, the basically the kind of wide open spaces, the old 70s, 80s look, doesn't mean it doesn't belong. It doesn't mean it can't be the nicest neighborhood in Keystone. I feel like there's nothing that compares to it. You ride around Keystone, you don't see houses this nice. You may see some on the lakes or in different little nooks and crannies, but you don't see houses that look presentable. You also don't see neighborhoods that kind of look like what I would say like more that community feel where people can go to. I believe these homes will provide an affordable housing for first-time home buyers as far as not necessarily saying it's affordable housing is low-income housing, but this is the kind of place that people are going to seek out to purchase their first home. I know me personally, I've been in Keystone since 2006. Whenever I got to the point of ready to purchase my home in 2016, it took me almost a year to find the home that fit my budget and wasn't a $50,000 decrepit trailer, but wasn't a $400,000, $500,000 house on a lake. So it was kind of a hard time, and it took a lot of time to find a house that fit everything. And I feel like the people that are coming up and hitting that phase of wanting to stay in Keystone and being in their 25 to 35 year range and being able to purchase their first home, I feel like these are very appealing to them. The budget they're looking at for a $250,000 to $350,000 home, that's to me more of an affordable home versus building. You talk to any I own a couple companies here. I own Johnson Land Management. I also own Keystone Custom Builders Inc. I'm a home builder as well. And you look at building a custom home compared to these homes, and it's just not affordable for first-time home buyers to go in and purchase their first custom home that caters to them. Right now, the market's a little crazy, and us local home builders just don't have the buying power and to do it at a mass scale like a national builder does. Also, I have been kind of talking with Jed. He called me out to the property to look at clearing the property from the get-go. I had personal interest in it because I have a personal interest in our community, and I want to, help do projects that make it nicer and this, that, and the other. And I feel like Jed, as a developer and the development he's trying to do, and being in the industry, you see developers that once they get this pushed through, they are on to their next development. Jed has kind of taken a special interest in it. I think he's really trying to build something nice for the community, not destroy the community. He's wanting to be very involved throughout the whole phase. It's not he's getting it passed through and then walking away. I think that many businesses will benefit from your local lawn guys to your restaurants. You're allowing space for more people. Okay. That's pretty much all I got to say. I think that it's a good thing for our community, especially for the generation that is looking to purchase their first home, and we're running out of place.
The last comment card that I have is for Mr. Keith Hatch.
Name's Keith Hatch. Again, I'm a broker in real estate. I'm also a former CPA, so I know numbers, I analyze numbers. I respect every comment that's been made here. I think that we need to listen about the turtles. We need to listen about the sinkholes. But I go back to my opening comment. We have schools that need to be renovated. We have things that need to be changed and upgraded. And what we saw last year from the county of, say, Clay County, is that we will not get those funds if there's not some type of controlled growth. We can talk about sinkholes. We got the expert sitting right here. I've heard experience from those who've been in the area. Say what? Excuse me, please. There are things called cattle dips. Anybody looked at that land prior to see if possibly it was a cattle dip? Just asking. I don't know. The traffic issues, they can be resolved. If we're going to look at all these temporary issues and jeopardize new schools, I think we're being short-sighted. We have a growth management committee here in Keystone Heights. They look at every development that's coming through here. They look to see if it's going to impact our schools. They look to if it's going to impact our infrastructure before it even gets to this point. Now that's not from an expert perspective, but it's from a business and citizen perspective. I hope, and I'll say this because I do have statistics here from the real estate market. There was an individual, and I think the individual's here tonight. I responded to his comment on social media, said there's not enough homes here for sale. There are enough homes here for sale. There's 50 listed today, but they're not new homes. All we're doing is replacing population. We're not getting growth. That's the reason we're sitting at 0.8% annual growth rate over the last 10 years. We're not going to get those funds for our new schools if we don't do something. We need to find a way to work together and not against each other. And I think tonight is a critical point for this committee to make the right decision for the future of our school systems and the infrastructure for this city. I want the small town feel. That's the reason I moved from Jacksonville down here. I enjoy walking into a restaurant and being called by name. I enjoy being the local Santa Claus and going into elementary schools and hearing the kids and helping kids. I'm here for the community. Now, I know there's people back there saying, oh, he's a real estate agent. All he wants to do is sell homes. I say to those folks, our brokerage firm doesn't just sell a home. We build a relationship. I could care less about the number of transactions. I care about the people that are moving into this community and that they have a community to move into. So I hope, I pray that you all will make the right decision for our kids for the future. If you need these, I'd be happy to share these statistics with you.
We have to give them to Mr. Commando or Ms. Rakowski.
Madam Mayor, that's all that I have for public comments. At this time, staff's requests a 5-minute recess.
Yes, that's fine. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes. Call the hearing back to order. I'd like to make a suggestion and allow the applicant to rebut anything the applicant has heard from his experts, his team.
Okay. Go ahead. We would call the engineer that talked about geotechnical issues.
Yes.
John Ellis, yes.
In your professional opinion, is there a river under the site?
No, I don't believe there's a river under the site.
Can you pull it a little bit closer?
No, I don't believe there's a river under the site, is what he asked me.
Is there, so it would be, is there some groundwater, but no evidence of a river?
Correct. The groundwater on the site, as stated in the report, is anywhere from 5 to, I think, about 15 feet below the ground surface. That's currently there, so.
Now, your report, the city attorney identified it as saying that there was a sinkhole on the site. Is that the area that we've identified where those two lots are? Whether it's a sinkhole or not, is that where you?
Yes, sir.
reported?
It splits the lot line on the two lots, yes, sir.
So, did you find any evidence of any other sinkhole potential formations on the site other than this one place?
No, sir.
And the applicant has agreed to relocate the lots out of that area?
He has stated before the board tonight that he's going to relocate those lots, use them for some other purpose. Yes, sir.
Now, there was some discussion about sinkhole formation under stormwater retention areas.
Right.
Have you got an opinion?
Right,
that
I do.
That's going to be a horrible thing on this site?
Yeah, the one lady mentioned about sinkholes and retention ponds. The tendency is, the whole idea of, I was trying to explain earlier, where a retention pond may trigger a sinkhole event. Several sinkhole projects involved in the past where large amounts of stormwater discharged from the storm system is dumped into a retention pond. The water soaks in, obviously, increases the weight. Like I was explaining how the water will actually, in this case, in a dry or wet retention pond, there's a different design. He's designed a dry retention pond where it's going to stay dry. Basically, have to mow the grass in the bottom of the pond. It's going to be a dry pond, not a wet pond. A wet pond tends to, the water collects, and then the water level is controlled by the groundwater. In this case, it's going to be dry because the water table is way below the bottom of the pond. The water's going to go in, it's going to flow down. The whole site is sloped pretty much downhill from the north to the south. We looked at the plans, and it eventually ends up, the groundwater kind of follows the ground surface to eventually, it's going to be down in the lake. We talked about at the south of the project at Paradise Lake is where the groundwater tends to fall to that surface. So if somebody asked the question earlier about if the groundwater or the water level in the lake was to rise, it would obviously push the groundwater levels back up the hill a little bit toward this project site. And it may raise the water level a little bit, but the pond is designed as a dry pond, and the pond should be a dry pond. So
you don't have a concern about sinkhole formation in a stormwater dry pond?
I don't. We did, I think, 4 borings across the pond area where the pond's going to be, and it doesn't appear to be a sinkhole type prone area in the pond area. And the other reason we do a lot of borings in ponds is that tendency is where the pond will be lower. They use a lot of that fill to help develop the lot. So we do a lot of borings in the pond areas to help understand what kind of fill material is going to potentially come out of the pond areas.
I think I agree.
Hello again, Misty Servia, for the record. And I just have a couple of responses of things that I heard. I wanted to start by talking about density. So you heard that this parcel of land is designated in your comprehensive plan as 6 dwelling units per acre. And I looked in your code while I was seated back here for your definition of gross density. I did not find it in your code. but I'm going to read a standard definition for you, and this comes from the lawinsider.com, but it's pretty standard. Gross density means the number of dwelling units per acre of gross usable area, including streets, easements, and usable open space of a development. So in summary, if you have 13.8 acres, you multiply that by 6, and the number you get is the maximum density that is allowed per your comprehensive plan. Net density is calculated differently. I also did not find that defined in your code or comp plan. Net density removes the roadways, the parks, any sort of easements, right-of-way, recreational areas, and some cities and counties have a net density limitation as well. The way I understand your code and comp plan, you're only talking about gross density. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record. The HOA regulations that you heard about, and someone asked, doesn't code enforcement do that? I expect that your code enforcement team is as stressed as every code enforcement team. So having an HOA does then self-regulate and removes the burden of your code enforcement team from enforcing the regulations that are presented by the developer and agreed to and approved by your staff. They're really just a legal instrument. I mean, in all the communities I've worked in, they're just a legal instrument. I've never talked about HOA regulations at a rezone hearing. It usually comes during the plat. So just for reference. The city impact fees, someone said you're not paying city impact fees, and that's correct because there aren't any. But if there were city impact fees, we would be paying them. We will be required to pay all the impact fees that are in place. And right now, that is school impact fees, okay? And transportation, thank you, Mike. Growth is really hard. I deal with growth every single day of my life as a commissioner and as a planner. But what I always say to people is if you're not growing, you're dying. So what you need sustainable, smart growth for the healthiest community. If you're not growing, you're dying. You heard from our expert, a professional engineer on traffic. No city roads will be impacted negatively. That's what your code requires. They won't be. And that's a fact from a professional engineer. You heard from the geotechnical engineer, another professional, that there's not a sinkhole on this site, but a depression. It's been studied. It's been sampled. Okay? It's not a sinkhole, it's a depression. You've heard the schools are completely capable of handling the people who will live in this new community. This project fully complies with your comprehensive plan and your land development code. That's why you have those regulations, and our proposal was designed with that in mind. The attorney may talk to you about private property rights. I am not an attorney, but the attorneys in the room will tell you that Florida has a very strong private property rights laws. They just do. If you own land in the state of Florida, you're entitled to develop it in accordance with the laws and regulations. So I ask you to please make decisions based on facts and science presented by the experts, not fear, not emotion, but facts. I sympathize with the people who live here because change is hard, but we're not talking about craters in Russia and Keystone Heights. We're not talking about that. So I feel very comfortable in all the expert testimony. I hope that you do too. And Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add? Nope? Okay. Anybody else? I think that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. So we come back to the dais. I really want to give everyone every chance to ask questions of our staff or any of the team members for the applicant. Say your last name for me again, please. Servia. Ms. Servia was very clear in her follow-up with us in terms of what the lot sizes mean and the difference between gross density and net density, which was my question. Mr. Hart, do you have any other questions of any of the experts in the room?
I do not.
Ms. Thompson?
No, thank you.
Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown?
I do. I got a couple questions, but I want to make a couple statements first. Being one that's lived here for almost 59 years, and yes, growth is hard. Growth is, I've lived here when we had a caution light and when we had our first red light. Mike, you remember that. Now we got 2 red lights. But I've seen Keystone grow, and we're not dead by any means. There's nothing, we can control what we have coming in. That's our job. But one thing I want to talk about, and I want to say one more thing about that doggone sinkhole. And I hope this doesn't muddy anybody's water, but I was there in the Park of the Palms. I was in the fire department, and I watched that house go down. And what did we do? We heard water. There was a lot of water coming up underneath there when that house went down in that sinkhole. But I don't know anything about sinkholes. I just know whatever's there, it's going to get sucked in. The one thing about the traffic, unfortunately, the roads this property is on is county roads. And if you only studied those roads and out to 100, did you go into, because when you go up the hill on Nightingale towards Orchid and Nightingale, that's all city roads. The impact of that, did y'all happen to study? I did see some gentlemen at the intersection of 21 and 100 one day doing a study. I don't know if that was y'all or what, but it doesn't impact, if you say it doesn't impact city roads, it does impact, because those county roads connect to city roads. And that is, and we go back to the school thing, and you said you studied in April. That road is heavily traveled now. And yes, and it's going to be traveled even more with homes. The other thing I like to say is the school numbers. I don't know where 11 came from, but if you're going to put 55, 52, 30, whatever, you're looking to, people are going to come is going to be the young families. Everybody here has said that. It's going to be the young families. And just saying we're going to have 11 new students in our elementary school, I can't believe that. But I didn't do any studies on that. My biggest thing, and I have spoke to our school board representative, and gave her my opinion that this money, that's the impact for our schools, stay in our Keystone schools. Not go up to Fleming Island, Oak Leaf, or anything like that. They need to stay here. But she's only one voice on that school board. So, but I'm concerned with the number of homes, and I've made that clear from day one. Do we need growth? Do we need new homes in Keystone? Yes. But I am concerned with the numbers of homes you want to put there.
Mr. Brown?
I think we spent a lot of money in the past on regulations, lot sizes, and I think we're going to have to stick with what the city already has in place as far as the square footage. I would like to see a few less lots, and I would just like to see us stick with what we've already got in place. That's it.
Ms. Thompson, any comments? Mr. Hart?
This is a tough one to wrestle with, because usually a court will give the benefit of a doubt to a municipality when they do something that's legislative in nature. This is a trial. We're acting as a judge. And we have to base our decision based on the record, because if we don't follow the record and follow the law, then we aren't doing our job, even though our decision may be unpalatable to some. I just want to read into the record a couple of things. First of all, Florida Statute 163.3194, I think you're probably familiar with this one. After a comprehensive plan or element or portion thereof has been adopted in conformity with this act, this statute, all development undertaken by and all actions taken in regard to development orders by governmental agencies in regard to land covered by such plan or element shall be consistent with such plan or element as adopted. So we have a statute that basically says that this has to be consistent with the plan. The other piece of legislation, which I think was mentioned at the prior hearing, is our ordinance section 17-102, which basically has two parts. I won't read it in its entirety, but Part A says that innovative plans are designed to create a planned development with a more desirable environment that would be possible through the strict application of conventional district regulations. The second part says that the density, and density has been talked about, must be consistent with the applicable land use category. My question, and I don't know if this has been conceded or not, but Mr. Ducro, are you conceding you're not going to build on those two lots that some call it a depression, we call it a sinkhole, your paperwork says it's a sinkhole. Are you saying you're not going to build on those two lots, or at least build a residence?
We are going to reconfigure the subdivision to go around that depression, yes.
Are you going to retain at 55 lots, or are you saying now you're going to drop down to 53?
I am not, I can't say one way or the other. I haven't gone to the drawing board yet. We are considering 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55 lots, yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. As far as the traffic, we don't have any direct control over Highway 100. I agree with the person who said that the chances of us getting a stop and go light there are de minimis. One question that I had was what the impact would be on the traffic going past the schools, excuse me. And we do have a state statute that basically says we can control the speed limit through school districts. Right now it's 15 during school time. We could reduce it to 5 or 10, and I think we'd be in solid ground to do that. So the traffic, to me, it's an issue, but I don't think we can really control it. And we have expert testimony saying that he didn't think that the local streets would be impacted that much. I don't know if that's the case or not, but we do have something in the record. As far as the sinkhole, I don't think we would be doing our job if we took the configuration as is with those two lots being used for anything other than, yes, Mr. Ducro?
Can I amend what I spoke earlier?
Certainly.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm on some
That's
pain medication, so I
okay.
If it matters to you and the council, we can go to 52 lots and reduce the infrastructure, reduce the density down to 52. We will not build anything around that depression area. I think there's a live oak in the middle of it. We'd love to keep it. And I would like to see a well built around it and maybe turn that into part of the park and then use that as part of our tree save area. I mean, just to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
So let me follow up. I think there's a few things going on. So less density. I think the benefit of going to 52 now and keep the PUD process moving, since that's where we've been going, is because we would have the 52 lots. They would stick with the 55-foot wide, but we would still like the less depth. So to move ahead with the PUD, I think would still be a valid approval in our mind. If we don't do the 52 lots, the 52 lots would come back in and be 50 feet by 135 without the parks and some other things. So I think if that's amenable to get the PUD approved with 52, I think that would be on the table.
This is going to be sewered and watered, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if the subdivision were to go in under the existing zoning ordinance, it could be septic and well.
It would be based on other requirements for lot sizes.
At least
It would be
in
larger.
theory, it could be.
Yeah, they would be larger lot sizes to meet the septic tank requirement, quarter acre minimum.
So to wrap up, as much as I can sympathize with what a lot of people have said, as a matter of law, I think the builder has met their burden of proof. And now as they've agreed to drop down to 52, any variance from our comprehensive plan would be de minimis, in my view. So my opinion is, while I don't like it, I don't know what options we have other than to consider it. That's all I have.
Okay.
Would 52 lots meet our minimum lot size?
So taking out those lots doesn't change the lot size. When you look at the ordinance that's before you for consideration on the rezoning, I've got to go back. I think it's under section 4. When you look at the 4D, the lot minimum of 60/50, that's still below the minimum that we have within the code. So just because they take those out, the other lots would still be below. That's part of, I mean, essentially, even though there's special conditions, what you're voting on is really C, D, and E. The lot depth minimum at 110, the lot area minimum at 60/50, and the lot coverage maximum at 45%. Those are the things that don't meet the code.
Well, you're talking about taking lots away, but you're not talking about making the lot sizes larger.
That's correct.
And if you don't make the lot sizes to our minimum, it doesn't meet our minimum standard, correct?
Well, that's what you're reviewing. That's the reason they're applying for a PUD.
Counsel, I just have a question. Have I so far stated the law correctly?
Yes, sir. As a lawyer, I would be surprised if you didn't.
No, I don't want you to tell me if I haven't. And that's for the record.
Mr. Duckrow, we were at the Florida League of Cities, and you were leaning over on the banister looking out onto the lake, and I walked up to you, and you said, well, Mayor, he said, is there a subdivision on that land? And I said, you know, there's a subdivision on the land. What it looks like really is what matters. And, you know, in keeping with the characteristics of our town, I feel like our minimum comp plan standard is defensible. It is consistent with the other communities inside city limits. I know I have spent many an hour with Mr. Kowski. We scoured our entire city limit boundary, and we looked for those lot sizes that don't conform with our standard. And there may be one or two that are less than the 6,500. So the people who came before me, and all of us up here on stage, have really leaned on those standards to keep some consistency about what everything looks like. I would like to see you develop that property. I think you have a perfect right to do so. What I believe is that this minimum is really that minimum for me. And so I'd like to see if we can't bridge the gap between your 6,050 square feet and the 6,500, because I think that's a good number. It's still a fairly small lot compared to all lots across our boundary. Do you want to speak to it?
Yes. Again, Mike Bell, for the record. So the comparison of the 52 lot configuration would meet those standard lot sizes. So we could do 52 lots that are 50 feet wide by 135 deep and get that without going through a PUD, without going through public hearings, without going through this process. So I think that's I guess what we want to make sure. And then the other thing is about 50% of the lots will be larger in depth because they will include the tree save areas in the back. So only about 50% of them will be the minimum 110 deep as we're proposing it. But if we go back and then redesign and come back in just administratively, we can come back with 52 lots that meet exactly your lot size, if that's what you intend. but they will be 50 feet wide, and they will be less than what we're proposing at 55. So they're 10% smaller from the front, which I think is what you're really seeing and what you want to see look better. So if you reduce them, they're going to be smaller to your code than what we're proposing.
Can you do 55 by whatever length it has to be and still keep the 6,500? I mean, it doesn't have to be the 135. If you do 55, what would the length be?
That's what we're asking for. It's 110 as a minimum, but the average is probably 125 to 130. It's only the, if you want to bring the picture up, I could show you, but the ones that are minimum size are the back-to-back lots between the two roadways. That's the only ones that are 110 deep.
Mike, I'm sorry. Mayor, to answer your question, the lot would have to be 59 foot wide. If you wanted to still have 110 lot depth and you still wanted to have 6,500 square foot as the lot area, the lot width would have to be 59 foot wide.
It's still pretty narrow, but it would look better than the 50.
Right, so your code allows 50, we're proposing to 55. So what I'm saying is this lot, these lots in the middle are the only ones that are technically 110 feet deep. All of the other lots that are on an exterior, it's measured to the outside of the tree save areas. When we plat, we will plat through the tree save area, so we're gonna add 15 feet to the backs of these lots. So these lots will be 110 plus 15, so it'll be 125 in this case. In the lake area, we've got 20 feet that we can add in the top of bank that we'll plat. So these will be 130, or 130, we add 20 feet. The ones on the north, the depth of that is 30 feet, so we will be at 30 plus 140 on the depth. So the physical depth of what you see is going to be larger than the 110 depth, but they're all 55 wide. The only place that we just don't have room is these back-to-back lots that are 110 total front to back.
And again, it's in the backyard. You're not gonna see it from the street. We will if we reduce the size and width to meet the code, but we're offering 55 by 110, and we still have the front yard setbacks, and the side yards will be a big distance between houses. The backyards will just be
So the tree save areas would not be common areas, they would be deeded to the property owner?
That's what I'm hearing.
No, they would be platted as tree save areas, but they could still be common area.
And then they're
They would be
controlled by the HOA, that no one
Okay.
can cut trees down in there.
Okay.
But you got 21 center lots that are not going to change.
They will be wider but less deep.
So where are you where are you gonna get that from? The center 21 lots,
Yes.
and you're saying we're gonna make them wider.
No, they are wider now. They're 55, they're wider than your code right now.
But not lengthwise.
Not lengthwise.
It's not gonna be cut on those
Correct.
21 lots.
Correct. They aren't
Correct.
today. If we go back and redesign and bring back something administratively, we can make it work for 52 lots that are 50 feet wide by 135 feet deep to meet your code. It'll look very similar to this, but a little different.
And it'll be a little more dense looking, because
Yeah,
the houses are closer together.
Yep.
At 50 foot wide lots.
So how do we feel? Mr. Brown?
Can I ask a question to staff? The neighborhood that I live in, we all have fences in our backyards. With this design, will they be able to have the setback to put a fence in their backyard?
That's going to be regulated by your HOA covenants and restrictions.
So it wouldn't go in with what our code is for the setback on putting up a fence?
No, not on that.
Okay.
Where are you now, Mr.
Well,
Hart?
I'm going to go back to the law again. I think it's clear that we have to stay within the boundaries of our comprehensive plan. The question is, would this do that? Section 17-102A, Part A, says we have to have a more desirable environment. I think the developer has met that burden of proof, talking about sidewalks, talking about pet areas. talking about tree retention and so on. Now, keep in mind that if we don't approve this PUD, they can keep the, he can build, and he'll just have to follow the existing ordinance. The developer has already conceded essentially that we're going to end up with a configuration very close to what the zoning code calls for right now, with some additional amenities. So I think Part A of 17102 has been satisfied. Part B is the density of use consistent with the applicable land use category. Has been pointed out, I don't think density has been addressed in our ordinance, so we have to sort of make up a common sense definition. And we don't know what the word consistent means. Does consistent mean identical to, or is there a little bit of leeway? I don't think it means identical to, and I think that with the changes that the builder has conceded to do, I think it is consistent with our land use. As far as traffic, I've mentioned, I don't think there's a whole lot we can do about that, and concurrency is going to be involved with the schools and so on. So I guess I would vote to go with the PUD, but give to staff the right to sit down with the developer and come up with something that is substantially similar to our existing code, so it meets the land use provisions. So that would be how I would vote.
Okay. Anybody else want to share?
The lot sizes still bother me. They either are big enough or they're not.
Is there a way to resolve that?
The PUD doesn't have any minimum lot sizes. That's why we're going through the process. There are no required minimums for the PUD. It's up to.
No, we have the area, the square footage.
If we go straight zoning, yes. Like I say, we would come back administratively and skip the board and deal with staff.
Let's correct that. Your requirement does have minimum lot sizes. That's what your attorney put in under special conditions.
Yes, the code, I'm sorry, the code does not require minimum lot sizes in a PUD.
No, I mean, that's the whole point of a PUD is you would.
That's what
I mean, the idea is that someone who's building multiple homes like this would have to come to you with multiple variances. So instead of having this much fun on 15 different variances, government combines a way for you to handle them all at once, which is a PUD.
Correct. So if I stated that wrong, the PUD, your ordinance for a PUD request does not have a minimum lot size that we would have to meet. We ask for what we want, and that's what you review. If we went straight zoning, we have to follow the land development regulation code and meet those minimum sizes, widths, and depths.
That's correct.
And so what would have been conceptually, design-wise, the difference between those two things? What numbers would we be looking at in terms of the number of homes you would have built under those conditions versus these conditions?
That's the 52, but they would be to your standard zoning code. We can go with 52.
Even the center lots? Even the center lots?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But 50 feet wide. So, and again, that's, I think, maybe why we're throwing that out, is we can go to 52. We'd like to keep this lot size if we stick with a PUD, instead of make them look smaller. But if we do go smaller, it's going to look tighter along the roadway. So if we could continue with a PUD, approve it with this lot size, reduce it to 52 units, I think
I think that reduction would be in your favor because, give me a little elbow room. I believe a larger lot it would sell even more.
Yeah, well, we would still be at 55, even if we reconfigure this, we still would reduce it to 52, but yes, it would give us a little more wiggle room.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have a number of realtors in the room, and I hate to put anybody on the spot, but you're experts, and so I wanted to ask the question. I know I've heard from some builders here in Keystone that when you build a new home, the people who buy those new homes are people who don't live here. You're not asking or giving your neighbor an opportunity to step up. You're giving a newcomer an opportunity to come in. How many of those realtors in the room would agree with that assessment? So Are you seeing, if you were building a new home, are you seeing people moving up from our community in those new homes? Are you seeing people from the outside coming in, buying those new homes? I'm looking at Brandon specifically.
So it's about 60% new people moving from Jacksonville or South Florida or one of the Carolinas moving to a new home, or it's the other 40% is locals finally upgrading from their 1970s run-down house to a new home.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Brandon.
That's believable.
That's believable?
Yeah.
All right, so any other discussion? Any questions for staff? Kenny's out late on a Monday night. He's got to get up early and go to work in the morning. Any other comments?
Vice Mayor, I'm happy that you're a lawyer because you understand this mess a lot more than what I would ever think about understanding. I go back to my common sense and my gut. I just have a lot of heartburn for 55 homes, 52 homes, 50 homes. I think that would, me personally, and I'm not a developer by no means either, but I would rather put, say, 30 or 35 homes in there and have people have a bigger yard. Me personally, you look at how the majority of us have grown up, and we look at what kind of shows did we watch when we were kids? Shows that people were in their yards and having the neighbors over and stuff like that. And I just can't see that happening with the majority of these lots being so doggone small. Now, times have changed. People rather stay on their phone or their iPads and everything else and don't know their neighbors. But I really have a problem, and I've made myself clear since this thing started. I just can't see 55 homes in that little area. I just can't.
The bottom line is, though, that if we do not approve this, the builder still has the right to, the developer has the right to use his property in a reasonable fashion. And that would be basically defaulting back to the ordinance as it exists now, with about the same number of lots. So, you know, we can either way, he's going to develop this if he so chooses.
And I understand that,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor, and forgive me for using this verbiage, but I feel like we're pretty well screwed. We're going to have a development with all these, if we don't agree with this, they can come back and do 55 homes, one way or another. Is that what I'm understanding?
Mm-hmm. 52, yeah. Yeah.
But I understand where you're...
Well, we have an ordinance, and since we're sitting like a court of law here, we have to follow the law. I mean, we can't just kind of make it up as we go along. I wish we could, but we can't. And essentially, if we don't approve this and he chooses to go forward with the subdivision, he can do that. And I don't know if he would go ahead with do it with septic and well, or if he would do it as he's proposing here with sewer and water. That's a biggie for me. So it's a Hobson's choice. And I think to follow the law, I think we have to approve the PUD with some minor changes. In other words, drop out those two lots. And I hear him saying he's not going to build anything on those two lots. So we're ending up with 53 lots versus 52. And you'd go to 52. So we have substantial compliance with our ordinance either way. So that's where I'm coming from, Tony.
But still not at the allowable lot size that the city already has in place. Is that what you're saying?
The configuration would be slightly different, but you'd end up with 52 buildable lots either way, is what I'm hearing.
With our approved square footage?
Yes. That's what I'm hearing.
No.
No.
No?
That's
No,
not
we
what I'm
would
hearing.
like to keep this configuration and drop it to 52. If we come back with the 52 that would be a different lot size, we would come back in just administratively.
But keep it in the PUD framework.
Yes, we'd like to
Oh,
keep
okay.
it in the PUD framework, so we
Okay.
have all the amenities
Gotcha.
and things there,
Okay.
but just go with the deeper lot size for the PUD. If we're gonna stick strictly to the standard that your code says, again, we wouldn't be here. We would just go file the application with the standard lot size and not go through the PUD process.
Well, I think that's what you ought to do,
Okay.
my opinion. I mean, it's,
I think it'll be a less desirable community with smaller lots and
I think
a
you could
smaller
take a
front.
center lot out of that, in the center, one on the top, one on the bottom, and you could get your lot size from your width. You just get rid of a couple lots, you know, in the center and make them all a little for the square footage. Just a thought.
I'd like to say one thing real quick there. Guys that are in the audience, you have to understand, we've never done this before. So whatever y'all chatting about, if y'all, I mean, we have questions, and we've got a major, major decision to make tonight. And so, you know, we're gonna ask questions that might sound stupid, but they're not stupid to us because we're asking them. So, we have, I mean, this is going to impact Keystone for when we're dead and gone. So, I'm just saying, we need to, it's very important. I understand this is going to happen. But we as a council have to be very,
Thoughtful.
yes, on how we handle this. Because I've been doing this for 20 years. I have never had to do this before. And it's, I mean, it's a job. We raised our right hands to do this if it came up. But, and it's our responsibility to care for our community. And growth's coming. There is no question about it. I mean, you drive up 21, go to 16, and you see that beltway coming. It's coming. But we've got to be very good at how we handle this. So I'll shut up now.
Council Jed Ducro again. I'm the developer. Councilman Brown, I can feel for you. It's like giving a baby, having a baby right now. Yes, you folks have never been through this before. I have a team of folks that have done it many, many times. We have just been presenting to you what your code says and what is allowable on this piece of property. As a PUD, you do have input and some control. If there's not a PUD, I don't know. I'm not threatening. I want, as somebody said before, and I have responded to a number of different things on Facebook and on media. I am not a greedy man. If I have to bring my 93-year-old mother up here to prove that point, she'll be glad to sit and talk to you folks. I want what's best for this community. I'm the second largest landowner in this town. My face is all over that. When I sell out all those lots, my name is going to be on that sign. It's going to say a Ducro development. I take great pride in that. I want to be able to deliver a nice community. And the only way we're going to be able to do that for sure is to go through a PUD. And now, Mr. Bobby Brown, I keep going back to the center lots. We're talking about the backyards. You're not going to see those differences. Yes, there are. It's 20 feet or 25 feet on each lot. But the house setback is still the same. The rear yard setbacks are still the same. The side yard setbacks will remain the same, as will the front yard setback. We're just asking for a little more leniency on those center lots. We've also are taking into effect that we're going to try and keep as many as we possibly can. And I won't know until I have an arborist get in there to tell you exactly how many trees. If there are live oaks in there, by golly, they're going to stay absolutely to the last absolute second. And then if they have to come down, then we have to do it. I mean, it's not something that I take great pride in. I think I mentioned early on in this, I've been doing this for 45 years. I have a very decent reputation up in the Dayton, Ohio area in the Cincinnati market. Now, I am new here to Florida. I've lived here since 2000, so I'm a newbie here to Florida. But my reputation up there for 40 years was we built developments like this. We kept every single possible tree that we can, and we build the houses around it. Now, that's what we're proposing here. If we can keep a live oak or another kind of oak in a front yard, there's no reason to take it down. That doesn't mean that we have to be restricted by those yellow spots. But if there's a tree that's a nice tree inside the front 20 feet setback, we're going to keep it. Why would we get rid of it? All it does is increase the value of the lot itself. Okay? I've heard many people talk about affordability. Affordability is a lot different than capital A affordable. These are not Section 8. They're not government housing. They're affordable to people who can afford to buy them. That's usually the first-time home buyer. It may be a group of senior citizens moving from up north to here. And I know y'all don't want Yankees. I'm a Yankee, but you know I'm a transplanted Yankee, and I understand. But at the same time,
I've got nothing against the Yankees.
I understand. I'm just making a statement, and it just, you know. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you understood. I feel every one of yours pain. You can ask anyone on my team. We have kicked this down the road so many times. And yes, we understand. Even Lynn has said, you know, this is the first time we've ever done that. Mayor, you've said this to me many times in conversations. And we're just trying to be helpful and try to get to the end zone to deliver a product that we think will best benefit Keystone. If you choose to don't go to PUD, then that leaves other alternatives open. That's all I can say. I'm not threatening. Please don't consider that to be a threat at all. We just want to stay within the laws. I'm sorry?
No threat.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm not afraid of you, so, you know, I'm just hear me out here.
Yes, sir.
You ever think of the customers coming in to look for the houses and stuff and say, well, dang, man, if the lot was just a little bit bigger, I'd buy a house in there.
And you know what? There are going to be people like that, but I'm going to guarantee you there'll be a lot more people that will say, this is a beautiful home. I like this neighborhood. And yes, I do like Keystone. And you know, with a development like this, there's going to be growth. You know, there's a gentleman sitting in the audience that's going to talk to you later in the year, probably about a much larger development that's coming through the works. And I understand I'm the first one through the door and I'm the one that's going to get the bloody nose. But at the same time, I'm trying to do the best thing I possibly can for Keystone Heights.
And so are we.
Yes, sir, of course you are. Absolutely.
Okay. I did see there was a hand, and I'd like to accommodate that. Seeing no objection, Mr. Hatch would like to approach the podium. Is there any objection? Nope.
I'm understanding what you're saying, Mr. Brown. Larger yards, larger acreage are absolutely wonderful things to have in new homes. But what you have to understand, that the stats that I gave council here, the median sales price in Keystone Heights over the last 6 months is $250,000. You increase acreage, you increase sales price. They no longer become a first-time home. They no longer become affordable to that new home buyer. So you don't get your growth. The developer sits stagnant on land because he can't sell them, because he can't build the homes that he needs to put on those lots to move those lots. I'm just sharing that from a real estate perspective. I think Brandon would agree with me, and the other realtors in here. You start increasing the size of the lot, you increase the value of the home, the sales price, and they won't move.
Thank you.
So the question becomes 52 homes in a PUD or 52 homes out of a PUD, right?
The question becomes, do we approve the zoning change as set out in the ordinance with the caveat that the developer will sit down with staff and reconfigure the lots to 52 rather than 55? I think that's where we're at, council. Is that pretty much it? We've had the first reading of the ordinance.
Can I just validate in the fact that that it will be introduced at what they want, and if that fits the desire, it's not that staff will be working on the geometry or parsing out anything.
No, that's not your job.
Okay.
I understand.
So I believe, Vice Mayor Hart,
Do we have a second, do we do the second reading of the ordinance?
Well, it's second reading, but there, at some point, I think there needs to be a motion to amend the ordinance to change that 4A requirement to 52. It's from 55.
Since the developers agreed to that, I'll make that motion.
is there a second?
I'm sorry, did I say that backwards?
No, 55, 52.
I realized it after I said it.
Is there a second? Seeing no second, motion fails. So an alternate route, what is the alternate route for the council? Is there a motion of a different kind?
I make a motion.
I think we need to stick with our specs on these lot sizes.
Well, that's not really a motion. That might be a reason. That would be a motion to deny ordinance 2022-595 because you believe it should remain with current lot sizes for that zoning classification.
I think it would keep our city more uniform size, like all the lot sizes.
You'll have
and
to
stuff.
speak into the mic more, Bobby.
I just feel staying with our present ordinance for the lot sizes would keep us in line all over Keystone. That's any other new subdivisions come in or whatever, we need to maintain that. Spend a lot of money to get that where it's at now.
I just want to add one thing, and I know that this is difficult because none of you have been through this before, but I would say that if you don't like having PUDs in the city, then you should change your code to not allow them, because we have complied with everything in your code and your comp plan for a planned unit development, 100%. And so if the city doesn't like that, then you should take legislative action and change your code to not allow it. But we have come in good faith and have presented a plan that fully complies with your regulations and your comprehensive plan.
I'd like to kind of counter that because you're asking for a variance for lot size. So if you had come to us with a plan that had 6,500 square foot lot sizes, that would have been compliant.
Madam Mayor, and I think maybe your staff and your attorney can chime in, but we're not asking for a variance. Your PUD standards allow any lot size. It's what governs development on this property is your comprehensive plan, no more than 6 dwelling units per acre. But I'll defer to your staff and your attorney.
The PUD allows flexibility as a zoning classification, but I mean, that's the whole point of a quasi-judicial hearing where you have to make findings as to whether or not you believe it's consistent with the comp plan. And I mean, you can look at the character of the surrounding neighborhood, which they addressed. But yeah, I mean, lot size is one of them. I mean, what the mayor's saying is that 59 foot, and I'm just using that as a number, you could still have the lot size and still meet the requirements of the PUD for the, I forgot what the other subletters were under 4. You would still need the exceptions for C and E and still kind of meet that. So it's a flexibility option that the council has to make a finding about.
So the answer to the question is, within the PUD, that was the number of square foot they chose because they're allowed to do so under a PUD.
A PUD provides flexibility. So instead of an applicant coming in to ask for multiple variances, a PUD bundles it and gives the council control in one body zoning category. So you have the flexibility within that to deviate from the other requirements that are elsewhere in the code. Mayor, we've been going for about another hour. Is there any chance we could take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. I think that would be worth it because I want to ask council a question. We're adjourned for 5. Bring it back to order. Thank you for the 5-minute break. It was good for me. I hope it was good for everyone else. So I just wanted to check in with staff, make sure I had an understanding of the mechanics. And so what I understand to be true is really what we're voting on tonight, when we get to that point, is that we're voting on Section 4. And this really kind of guides the PUD. And I believe that we want to leave it in PUD format for quality. And so I'm asking council take a look at D. If all things were equal, Mr. Bobby Brown, if D said 6,500 square feet, and we didn't necessarily need to mess with, and let me ask Mr. Commando, could we leave the lots, the widths and the depths? No, we don't want to do that. If we just demand the 6,500 square feet in the lot area, would the minimum depth and width absolutely have to be stated in this document? So, for example, could they have some flexibility if they go back to the drawing board and they see they can do some things, as in moving, they're going to need to reshape their retention pond as a result of the depression sinkhole? Would we have to have minimums 55 and 110 in A and B in the ordinance?
So you don't have to have those in the ordinance. However, absent a clear condition as part of the approval, then it would revert back to what's in the code for residential, which would be the 50 by 135. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think that resolves the problem, though. However, as the applicant and their experts and counsel and I were talking before, all of the, I guess what I hadn't realized is all of the exterior lots either meet or exceed that 6,500. I'll ask Mr. Duckrow to come and talk about that. So when you talk about that 60/50, you're talking about those center lots only. And if I misstated that, Mr. Duckrow, please correct it.
All we're talking about in the PUD for the reduction are these lots right here. All of these lots will meet or exceed your depth requirements and will give us 5 more feet of lot width. We're asking for this right here to be 110 feet deep. This is a tree save area, so our intention would be to keep as many trees as we possibly can in that general area. These, again, one more time, these lots all around the outside, the vast majority of the lots are going to be 55 and but deeper than 130, 135 feet deep.
Jen, let me clarify.
Okay, sorry.
Just for the record, don't sit down. But just to clarify, the blue areas, this is 15 feet. So let's look at one of these cases. So for lot 48, 110, as we propose it to here, there's an extra 15 feet. So that's 125 feet by 55 right now, as we propose it.
But it's not, it's public property, the 15 feet.
No, it's not public property. It'll be platted, and it'll be owned by that lot owner. There will be a conservation easement and some open space requirements.
It just means they couldn't build in it, but that 125 by 55 would be 6,875 foot.
That's right.
6,875, so.
And you can't cut the trees down in there, all right?
So the tree line would not be a common area usable by all of the people, just by the person who owns
No,
that lot?
it still could be common area.
Still could be,
Still
like
could
a
be.
walking path or
Yes,
something
sir.
like that?
So again, that was leaning towards all lots would be deep enough. They won't be deep enough, but they will be over the minimum square footage on the outside. So if we keep the 55, and that's just one example, so that is 110 plus the 15, 125 by 55 gives us 6,875 feet. The north ones, the north property, we've got 110 and we have it 30 feet. So we're actually at 140 on the north side if we plat to that north line. So we're 140, which is deeper than your lots, and we're 55, which is wider than your lot. So all of those 1 through 13 are that way. 35 to 45 along the lake, there's a lake maintenance easement that can be platted within that lot that can be 15 feet. So those will be 125, just like these, which will be 6,875 square feet, larger than your 6,500. The only ones that, so if you look at the average, the only ones on the minimum square foot would be the internal 14 through 24, 14 through 34. So we've got area, we've got width, and as Misty said, if any of you drive down these roads once it's built, you won't know if it's 120 feet or 135 feet deep. You don't see that.
Well, and one of the other comments that was made is that when you look, if you'll go back, Mr. Bell, when you look at the end of those center rows, that kind of pink thatched area is all recreational area. So they've accepted that out to create a recreational area. That part of that is why those lots end up being smaller.
Are you required to have a recreational area in
With
your?
the PUD. We go back to the straight zoning, we are not. So it would not, if we go to 52 straight zoning, it would not have the recreation area.
Well, if y'all have looked around, you got a park right across the street.
Absolutely, but we feel this would be a great amenity for the public.
That goes to
Where
the more
mailboxes
desirable.
are gonna be, we think it'll probably end up being some kind of a pet area. There'll be, I'm gonna put some benches in there for people to sit and just kind of gather.
That speaks to the more desirable environment question
Yes.
that I have.
Do you have questions, Ms.
Yes,
Brown?
thank you. You heard me.
So again, the 55 by 110 is kind of a bare bones minimum, but it doesn't mean that every one of our lots meets that. Maybe that's what needed a little clarification, if it helped.
It helped me, yes, thank you.
And I might be beating this up too much, but I'm just, if we went with the 6,500 as our code says, how many houses could you put in there? And you might have already said this, but just
52.
with 6,500 square feet, you can
Yes.
put 52.
It would probably be a very similar design there. So imagine it's not a PUD and it's under the current zoning. Current zoning doesn't require the recreational space, doesn't require the sidewalks, doesn't require the boundaries around the exterior part. They could, now remember, all those exterior lots, 1 through 13, and then 35 through 55, obviously, if they take out the 37, 38, all those would automatically be close to conforming with our code. The ones in the middle, so take out that recreational area and expand it all out to, I guess it's the northwest. I would imagine that's how they'd make those lots bigger to get to that 65.
And if you revert it to the code, it's now, the sidewalk can go away.
Correct, but that's what I'm saying, is so with that recreational space. So they could make those lots in the middle, like, remember we said if you did 59 by the 110, you'll still hit 6,500 square foot. So if they made those lots all 4 foot wider, you're gonna lose that recreational space for the purpose of meeting your 6,500 minimum lot size. And that's for you to decide.
At the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a platted area. Is that recreation as well?
Which color?
The pink up top?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Lift station.
Yes, ma'am, that's recreation, open space. The cross hatch are both recreation. The area around the drive retention also could be a walking trail, that's why it's pink as well for recreation.
So that checkered, like the mayor was saying, that checkered place right there in that cul-de-sac.
Yes,
and-
this area
and
as well as this
I-
area.
Yeah, but the top one right there, there's a lift station there for this, for sewer?
Yes, sir. Farther north, the blue one?
No, right there, you did it.
This one?
Yeah, that's a
This-
lift
this is-
station on the other side
Oh,
of
the
it?
lift station is here, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
But the pink space is green space.
Recreation, again, it may be park, it may be a dog park, but yes, open space, tree, benches, the mail kiosk is there, sidewalk connectivity to that area for the neighborhood.
So does the PUD, does it demand a certain percentage of green space in the PUD?
So PUD does require the recreational areas. The PUD does, but the underlying zoning, if you didn't make the change, does not.
Say that again, please.
The PUD does require it. However, if the application was denied and they went back to develop under the current zoning classification, that classification does not require the same green space.
So if the compromise is, we consider the smaller green space, the PUD green space, we could then ask him to make all the lot sizes in the middle, the 6,500 square foot lot sizes that we desire.
And you lose the green space.
And so the realtors are in the room are saying that adds more value than having a bigger yard.
We have to take into account the amenities also.
You know, the amenities would be nice for some people coming here because we don't have very many amenities in Keystone. It's becoming better. The larger lot size is not that much larger. So where most people looking at it would increase the size or the price. However, your average person's not going to notice that much of a difference. They just are looking at a new home with a new roof, everything new so they can finance it and go on with their days.
And may I add one more visual to add to that? If the lot size is increased, the same setbacks would be in place, so the distance between homes would still be 15 feet. So visually, you've got, if it's 50 feet, you've got 15 feet between them. If it's 60 feet, you've got 15 feet between them, potentially, that you can build to that setback. So street view is going to be, you know, what you're going to see again. So it wouldn't be that you would have a 60-foot lot and then only build as if you were building for a 50-foot lot. You wouldn't keep that 10 feet on each side, if you know what I mean. The building setbacks are set in this PUD as well, and we're just following the standard zoning code. So either way, that setback would still be 15 feet between homes. If it was even a 100-foot lot, you technically could put, you know, an 85-foot home in that full lot, but the setbacks would remain the same.
Setbacks remain the same.
Between homes.
The lot size increases, the square footage of the house could increase.
Potentially, yes. I mean, it could be deeper, you know,
Right.
or wider, but yes, the standard lot sizes remain the same with the PUD as we're proposing.
Either way, the setback, side yard, and backyard is going to be the same.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown?
I'm sorry. I have a question for our lawyer. If we were not to pass this tonight, and could we, as a council, as legally, can we ask for them to come back with less homes on this property? Can we legally do that?
So can you? I mean, I guess you could ask anything, but if they don't accept it, like I said, they can, they've already run the calculations where they believe they can put, is it 52? 52 homes on the property, no matter what you ask.
So if I say I want to see 35 homes, that the chances of that happening is in a.
I'm not speaking for the developer, but I would say economically, it's impossible.
Okay.
If you look at the cost to meet the codes and meet the impact fees and everything that goes with it, just the water and the sewer for this is about $1.5 million spread out over that. That's just the water and sewer. So to go to 30, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but 30 would never work. I mean, it's probably, I think the 52 is doable from the standard zoning, but I think if you got too far below that, and Mr. Duckrow could probably answer, it's just not economically feasible to do it in accordance with the size and the scope of everything else required to get to that point.
Well, I'm definitely, council, I'm definitely against the septic tanks and wells. And like somebody said earlier, I mean, you go up landing in the middle, before you even get to Middleburg, that whole housing development there, bigger lots, but they all are on septic and wells. And when we have a sewer system right across the street from where you're developing, and we have
Water.
water that's available,
And that wasn't by chance. I mean, again, you guys went out and reached out to this landowner knowing you wanted to grow and knowing that you wanted to have a place that met smart growth. So that's why it's there. And again, that's a very positive thing to say, because there's so many negatives with it that it's unbelievable. But I think the positive of that is extremely in this area. You know, failed septic tanks and wells are not a great thing for Keystone Heights.
But it's going,
yes.
Yep.
but it's going to cost you more to have to pass that on to the home buyer. They're going to have to pay for the well and the septic tank to be added to the cost of that home.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct. So it's either the cost for utilities is individually by the homeowner, home buyer, or builder. But again, central water and sewer is much, you know.
Right, but if they put in their own well and septic tank, you're at another, what, $10,000-$12,000. So if you keep your prices same on the home, they're going to get whatever that cost is, less in less of a house.
I'm not sure the question,
Okay.
but these lot sizes would not allow well and septic tank. You would have to go to a quarter-acre size lot to be able to put a septic tank.
Or a mound system, which would be ugly.
Yeah. Just for the state requirements, it's a quarter acre if you have water. If you don't have water, then you go to a half-acre lot. Again, that's what Keystone has. That's the difference in what you're typically seeing is you've got wells and septic tanks, a larger lot. You have to put 75 feet between your well and your septic tank on the other sides of the property, and it makes a larger lot.
So if we can't compromise on those, increasing the footage on those lots, it's going to make you put in larger lots anyhow, if you go with well and septic tanks.
Yeah, we can't, for the density here, we can't go wells and septic tank, yes. It would require, again, half-acre or quarter-acre lots. And again, I'm not sure that CCUA would not frown upon that, because there are water and sewer adjacent, and I don't know their code, but many municipal codes say if there is water and sewer available within a quarter of a mile, you will hook to it. So they may or may not say that, I don't know it.
No,
but
so we have a 200-foot, I mean, because of how close you are to where water and sewer is now, like we kind of took a detour here on the well and septic discussion, they would have to connect to water and sewer no matter what.
Yeah. So that's a city, you're saying a city or
Correct.
CCUA?
Correct. It's a city 9-154.
Yeah. And again, if I know if, Tony, if you went to 30 lots, I think then what happens is, one, you create an unsaleable lot, and the prices would be, you know, 2/3 higher than they have to be to pay for the land costs and all the development costs that go with it. So the economics just aren't there for the, you know, for that type of a discount on the number of lots.
I don't think we could require that anyway. We would have to amend the ordinance, and I don't think that would fly. Realistically, I think we're locked into what we've got.
Okay, where does council want the discussion headed this time, at this moment? I think what I've heard is that many of the lots comply with our 6,500 square foot lot minimum. The PUD requires a recreational area and other amenities in order to be a PUD. The only lots that don't meet the minimum requirement are the lots in the middle.
So 31 would meet it, 21 would not.
And 2 of those lots you're not gonna build on anyway.
Well, I had already accepted out
Yeah, yeah.
those 2.
So to reiterate what I said before, I think this meets our comp plan, so it satisfies the statute that I read in the record. I think the more desirable environment standard has been met with all the extras, including the rec area. Density has to be consistent with the land use, but doesn't need to be identical, and since we're losing 2 lots, I think it is essentially identical, or close to it. The difference is so small that I don't think it violates our ordinance.
I think keeping it in a PUD format is a very important decision by council. I will add that. Mr. Brown? Anything, Mr. Brown?
I just, it bothers me in a way, but I also agree with you guys on where we're headed here. But it's just, I go back to the first meeting we had. Our first city manager we had, I showed him that piece of property because all I heard was we needed growth. We can't annex because nobody wants to annex inside the city limits. But that was a potential of property for us to grow one day. I didn't think I'd be on the council when we had to make this decision, but I don't think we have a choice. Honestly, don't think we have a choice.
So is there a motion?
And I made a motion earlier that it wasn't seconded to reduce it to 52.
Do we have greater understanding now?
I will restate that motion that as long as the development only has 52 buildable lots for residences, I would be happy with that. That's my motion.
But that still would not, all the lots would not meet our minimum. That's what you're saying. The ones in the center are not going to meet the minimum square footage.
You want to have a little bit bigger lot, or do you want to do away with the residential or with the recreational area?
Well, my point a while ago was we've got a park right across the street. And a lot of that hasn't been developed. You know, you got the dog walk, well, I won't go into that, but it could be developed.
It could be argued that if you're going to have first-time home buyers, they're going to have young children, and are young children going to be wanting to cross a busy street where they can go to a recreational area in their backyard, essentially?
If they would use it.
If they would use it, yeah.
Are we in discussion?
Yes.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, Bobby, but I
do too. I get it.
And we do have a nice park across the street, but if you go into most every one of these developments anywhere has some type of playground for younger kids. I personally, if I was going to buy something in here and I was a young man and I had kids, I would want something for my kids that I can just walk down the street, and that would be to me that would be a selling point to have something like that. I'm not a young man anymore, so. But that I do drive. I go around a lot in my work, and most all your subdivisions and stuff in Gainesville that I'm around have some type, maybe not very big, but there is some type of playground for them to take their kids and stuff to.
Madam Mayor, if I may
Ma'am.
just state for clarification to the council, because I think that we've gotten into the weeds a couple of times. Under the provisions, if Vice Mayor Hart's motion were to be seconded, and it would be brought down to 52 lots as opposed to the 55, then as Mr. Commando stated, 31 of those lots would in fact meet the minimum lot square footage of 6,500. In fact, they would actually exceed to a ballpark, 125 by 55 of 6,875. So that's 6,875 square feet. 31 lots would meet roughly that standard. The internal lots, 21 lots, would not. So when we have conversations about the 6,500 and that being important, I just want to make sure that council understands what these lot dimensions are going to be. So you're looking at over half meeting
Yeah.
the 6,500.
Over half. So, Mr.
Is there a motion? To clarify my motion, it would be section 4 sub A of the ordinance where it says 55 single-family lots. That number would be changed to 52. Or 53, I'm sorry, 53.
No, 52.
52. 52.
We have learned the number.
That's right.
But you couldn't, in the center part, you couldn't take a lot on the top and a lot on the bottom and the extra footage. I mean, you'd be just losing 2 lots and then you would still be in compliance with our ordinance. So, I mean, would that be possible?
Is 50 possible? Is 50? 50 is the new number.
Would that be?
I think we'd rather do 55 and not go through BD. I mean, 52. Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Because if we could go to 52, we think that's the threshold that we can get to. Again, smaller lots, less amenities, but we can get to that.
Less liability, too. Yeah.
So the answer to the question is 50 is a no-go. 52 is the number.
52 is my motion.
52 is the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion will pass 3-2. All right.
So at this point, depending on the will of the council, if there's a motion to read by title, and then you would take a vote.
Also move, read by title.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Ordinance number 2022-595, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Keystone Heights, Florida, amending the city zoning map by amending approximately 13.87 acres of real property owned by Duck Road Development Group, Inc., from residential single-family to a planned unit development, providing findings by the City Council, providing direction for recording, and providing an effective date.
Having read by short title, is there a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 2022-595?
Question, is that going to the 52 lots right there?
So if there is a motion, it would be a motion to approve as amended.
Is there a motion to approve as amended? Thank you, Mr. Commando. I'm a little tired at this point in our gathering. I'm sorry, was there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tony. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Hey.
Motion passes 3-2. So you have a PUD.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Just to close out. Sir? Yeah. Jed, I just, one thing, when you came here a few years ago, was it 15 months ago? Man, it feels like it's been a long time. And you wanted to put modular homes in there. And you wanted to put modular homes in there?
I did, yes, sir.
And one of my biggest concerns was we would not get ad valorem tax.
Correct.
And I will say that the city will get taxes off this property.
That's why I heard you and I changed it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yep. Meeting is adjourned.